This man has a Yunxian ability that allows him to see numbers hovering above people's heads. But what do those numbers mean? They show exactly how many people that person has harmed or will harm someday. Our MC carries a mark that represents far more than what can be seen on his face. In order to settle the pain of his past, he chose to target everyone fated to become a killer. Still, he follows only one rule. If someone is destined to take only one life in their entire lifetime, then it is not worth pursuing. To him, that would only mean exchanging one life for another, a pointless use of time. What if that person is destined to take 2 lives? Or even 200 lives? Those are the monsters he chooses to hunt. But then comes the question, how many people has he already taken down? Hasn't he become a monster himself? Our main character is known simply as Number. He is Korea's most wanted serial killer. The police are pouring all their effort into tracking down this hidden monster who, in secret, commits every act believing he has a righteous reason. Or perhaps even good intentions are not enough to justify it. The story begins as the news reports warned the public about the killer's latest victim. The culprit was still at large, even after more than 20 victims had been found. Although every victim came from the same city, no link connected them. It looked as if they had all been chosen randomly. While those news reports kept ringing in her mind, a woman stared at the portrait of her sister, who had recently lost her life. Few days later, the grieving woman, Say Law, was back at work in the office. There, she saw more reports about the serial killer's victims. The constant news was draining her completely. Then a coworker's voice finally pulled her back to the present. Her colleague Yoon looked worried and asked if she was suffering from a migraine. After work, they went out to eat with several other coworkers. They said she was feeling better now and had only been distracted for a moment earlier. Yoon still looked uneasy, reminding her that the last time she felt unwell, she had even thrown up. Another coworker felt they should give Say some space since the tragedy had happened not long ago. With sadness in her eyes, Say recalled her late sister drinking with them only a few days earlier. In that memory, her sister had seemed so bright and full of life. That only made the shock even worse when Say later had to see her sister in the morgue. She had been forced to identify her poor sister there. At the time, she noticed how unusually pale her sister looked. Her hand hung over the side of the gurney, and Say saw the number 2 marked on that lifeless hand. It was clearly the work of the Number serial killer, Korea's most infamous criminal at the time. Back in the present, Yoon asked how many people had already fallen victim to the criminal. More than 30. At the same time, a coworker agreed the number kept rising, including cases carried out by copycats. Another young woman had lost faith, saying it seemed like the police were ignoring what was happening. A coworker agreed, calling them useless people who deserved to pay for their failure. To Say, none of that mattered anymore. Nothing could bring her beloved sister back. As a journalist, reporting on crimes only after robberies or murders had happened now felt meaningless. The real problem had to be removed at the source. There had to be some way to identify future criminals before they harmed society. Could those people be stopped before they hurt anyone? Thoughts like that had been haunting her for days. As they were making their way home, Yoon called out to his friend. He told her to be careful and to use streets where security cameras were installed. He also hinted that she might feel better if she started going out with someone, perhaps thinking of himself. She only smiled gently and said goodbye to him. At that same moment, someone was observing them from the top of a building. Turning to her review of the crime scenes, Say heard again that the victims had no connection. The only thing they shared was a number marked somewhere on each of their bodies. No one knew whether the culprit acted alone or in a group, or whether any motive existed behind the crimes. This case was unlike anything seen before. There were no witnesses, and it was rare for anyone to see the culprit and survive. While interviewing the witness from the 21st case, the woman said the incident began with several strange coincidences. She had gone out for dinner at a restaurant, and on her way back, she took a street she normally avoided. It was along that route that she unexpectedly became a witness. She saw the criminal standing before a man who had already been badly injured. Meanwhile, the young man who witnessed the 13th crime insisted there had been more people on the street, but by the time he noticed it, everyone around him seemed to have disappeared. Aside from the person pursuing them, the man appeared to know exactly what they planned to do. It was almost as though he could predict what would happen next. They could not help wondering how those witnesses had managed to survive. Why would the criminal spare them when they could reveal everything they had witnessed? The first witness heard the man's voice and was sure she would lose her life there. Yet he only told her that her number was 1 and that she was not the person he wanted. Say wanted to uncover more of the details. However, for security reasons, the police refused to disclose even the numbers marked on the victims' bodies. It was unsettling to think that such a criminal could exist in Korea. He did not even bother hiding the bodies or getting rid of witnesses. Her inbox was packed with tips people had sent about the case. Still, only one message truly stood out and seemed worth serious attention. Wanting to learn more, she called the sender right away. That night, Say felt thrilled. The clue she had found was even more promising than expected. As she walked along, her mind stayed wrapped in those thoughts. From a distance, someone quietly kept their eyes on her, Then the smile faded from her face. She had realized that someone was following her, drawing nearer with every moment. Sei recalled what the young man from the 13th crime had said. When he sensed something was wrong, the street had already gone completely empty. She fought to keep herself composed, but the sight of her pursuer unsettled her. He kept closing the distance step by step. Panic took over, and she broke into a desperate run. Sei lost her balance and fell after the man seized her arm. It felt as if there was no longer any way for her to get away. Just then, Yoon appeared and pushed the man away from his friend. He took Sei by the hand and urged her to run with all her strength. When she asked why he was there, he reminded her that he worked at a restaurant nearby. He then asked who the man chasing her was, wondering if he might be the serial killer known as Number. The man kept pursuing them as they ran. They tried to make their way toward a busier area, all while attempting to lose him behind them. Yoon chose to cut through an alley, hoping it would lead them faster to the main street. The moment they stepped into the alley, they appeared even more frightened than before. It was a dead end, and when she turned to warn Yoon, she saw he was coming. He was moving toward her with an iron bar in his hand, still lying on the ground. She saw the other man drawing closer. He grumbled that Yoon had run too quickly, but the blonde man did not care. In the end, he had succeeded in leading the girl to that secluded place. With no security cameras around, it was exactly the kind of place he needed for his plan. From the ground, Sei asked Yoon why he was doing this to her. The man who had chased her said she and her sister had nearly ruined everything for them. The young woman could not understand what he meant. As far as she knew, her sister had been killed by the serial killer, but the truth was that they had been behind it. They had simply carved a number into her hand to make it look as though Number was responsible. The two men argued over what they should do with Sei. Yoon made it clear that he intended to be the one to finish it. Just as his accomplice moved nearer, they realized they were not alone in the alley anymore. The man warned the newcomer to leave and stop interfering. The true serial killer only continued watching them in silence. It looked almost as if a blue flame burned from one of his eyes. He could see numbers hovering above their bodies. Then the man stated that they were criminals marked by fate. A few hours earlier, Sei had met a woman who claimed she owed deep gratitude to Number. She was the witness in the 37th case and said the serial killer had saved her entire family. According to the journalist's research, the victim in that case had been the woman's ex-boyfriend. The woman described him as a terrible man who often came to her home and hurt her. During one of those attacks, the serial killer suddenly appeared. Sei believes the entire situation placed the witness and her family in serious danger, and she cannot understand why the woman thinks they were rescued. The woman merely laughs, as though the serial killer would never have turned on her as well. In her current position, the young woman understands who that man chooses to save and who he decides to punish. Facing the two men, he declares that both of them are destined to become criminals. Then he begins moving toward them at a slow, steady pace. Yoon's accomplice panics and shouts for the serial killer to keep his distance. He charges forward, swinging the iron bar at him. However, he is quickly disarmed and struck hard in the stomach. Realizing that he may be the next one chosen, Yoon grows increasingly tense as the man draws closer. The serial killer looks back at the criminal lying on the ground. Seeing the number one floating above his head, he states that the man is not his intended target. It was the very same explanation the witness had given Sei during the earlier interview. By contrast, the number hovering above Yoon's head was 4. Aiming his knife at him, the serial killer announces the number and says the blonde man is a target to be removed. He then rushes toward Yoon, who still struggles to accept the danger surrounding him. A series of seemingly random numbers flickers before the criminal's eyes. As the two men clash with blades in hand, the blonde man is quickly stripped of his weapon and is overwhelmed by his opponent's attacks. His accomplice hurries in to help, yet he is no match for Number either. As Sei watches the struggle unfold, she recalls everything she has heard about the killer. People said there was no clear pattern behind the victims he chose. They wondered how he had misled the police for so long, while witnesses claimed it seemed as if he could foresee what would happen. The last woman Sei interviewed said her former boyfriend, who later died, had brought a bag when he came to her house. When the police opened it, they found flammable materials inside. The man had apparently planned to burn down his ex's home, which meant if Number had not appeared that night and stopped him, he would have set the house ablaze with her entire family still inside. Back in the present, Yoon remains on the ground, yet he still points a knife at the killer, though it changes nothing as the man strikes him aside, forces his target down with a powerful kick. Still watching, Sei begins to wonder whether this man can perceive things ordinary people cannot. Perhaps he can see the future and recognize people who will take lives before they ever get the chance. Maybe he can even see how many people they are destined to harm. The serial killer pulls out a recorder and states the date, time, target number, and the man's name. He explains that by removing this target, he will be saving the 4 lives lives the man would have taken. Before ending it, he asks whether the man has any final words or wishes, promising to grant them if they are reasonable. Yoon curses at him with a sneer, still seeming unable to grasp how close he is to his final moment. Number understands that those are the last words Yoon wishes to say, even though Yoon then begins pleading for his life. It is already far too late. Amid everything that has happened, the blonde man's accomplice takes the opportunity to escape, dragging himself away. At last, the killer marks the number 4 onto his target's hand. Sei asks whether the killer intends to go after the other man too, but he explains that anyone marked with only the number 1 is not a target, because taking one life to save one life changes nothing. The young woman realizes he believes it is not worth doing, since there is no true loss or gain in ending someone like that. To her, this reasoning is beginning to sound strangely logical. That is exactly why she offers to assist him. He has lost count of how many times she wished she could identify future killers and stop them before they acted. As a reporter, she says she can help the criminal stay hidden while spreading his message to a wider audience. Having someone like her who shares the same purpose would be a tremendous advantage. The man asks whether she truly believes that. Revealing his face to her, he says he will not waste time on conversation. Then he pulls out another recorder and asks whether she has any final words or wishes. Sei stares in disbelief. Why would he say something like that to her? In the serial killer's eyes, the number above her head is perfectly clear. 12. To him, every human life holds equal value, even if some people are good and others are bad. What he knows is that the absence of certain people can make the world a better place. Even without knowing who was innocent or guilty, he still tried to remove every numbered person he discovered. In the end, all he truly wanted was to save as many people as possible. He also did it so he would never freeze when a life had to be taken. CAF TV reported that copycat crimes inspired by the serial killer were spreading rapidly. The waitress kept watching the news covering the deaths of Sei and Yoon. It also mentioned that Yoon's accomplice had revealed details about what had happened. A customer calls out to the waitress, drawing her attention away from the news. At the same time, a strange customer can be seen in the background. That man was, in fact, none other than the serial killer himself. He sat quietly, calmly writing something down in his notebook. He selected each item from the menu with careful attention. This way, the food would be served exactly when he wanted it. Even the seat he chose had clearly been picked with purpose. From there, he had a clear view of everyone entering and leaving the place. By sitting beside the window, he could also look down at the street outside. From that spot, he could see the number above every passerby's head. The first person to draw his interest was a girl wearing a choker, with the number 2 above her. Then there was a man who had just left a government building, carrying the number 4. The waitress had the number 1 floating above her head. The criminal then realized that, at least in that area, his potential targets were nearly gone. He focused first on people with higher numbers, especially when those numbers began to blink. The waitress comes over to the table to bring his order, but by then he has already disappeared. Only the payment for the bill remains, beside a cup of coffee left untouched. Elsewhere, inside another restaurant, a gang was celebrating noisily. Their loud behavior disturbed the other diners, who only wanted to eat in peace. Eventually, a waiter approaches and asks them to lower their voices so they do not bother everyone else. In response, one man hurls a bottle into the wall, nearly hitting 2 young people seated nearby. Gripping another bottle, the man threatens the waiter while asking if they were really being that disruptive. From the back of the bar, another tattooed man calls the waiter over and demands more drinks. Meanwhile, at the table, the rude man is congratulated for being released from prison on parole. The blonde man says the lawyers were incredibly expensive, but their work was worth every penny. He complains that making a deal with the girl's father had been irritating. He talks as though the father should have simply accepted the money after what happened to his daughter. The blonde man showed no remorse for hitting the girl while drunk and leaving her with a life-changing injury. He believed he still deserved freedom, simply because he planned to compensate the victim. The victim only took the money because the man's associates had pressured and threatened her. After leaving the bar, the blonde man gets into a car, while his friends laugh about him driving again and joke that they should avoid the cops. Even while drunk, the man presses down on the accelerator. The car heads straight toward a crowded sidewalk. Inside the vehicle, the blonde man is nearly asleep at the wheel and barely understands what he is doing. Then, from behind him, the serial killer suddenly appears. He warns the man to turn the wheel, or something far worse will happen. The final moment before reaching the sidewalk, the blonde man follows the order. After that, he is given further instructions to drive to a certain place. At that moment, the blonde man's number starts flashing, showing that it will soon drop. That meant this man would cause someone's death in less than a day. The serial killer tells him to move into the passenger seat and asks if he has any final wish. A countdown begins, but before it can reach 0, the blonde man struggles to stop the attack aimed at his throat. Because of that, the steering slips out of control and the car swerves across the road. Losing his patience, number forces the criminal criminal's head down against the steering wheel. Then he wounds him directly in the chest. At last, the car comes to a halt. The serial killer then takes out his recorder, once again noting the date, time, and the number above the criminal's head. As his strength fades, the blonde man tries to ask who sent the serial killer. The killer simply continues recording, saying that no matter what he did, the target's number would not change. The criminal uses that brief moment to try attacking the serial killer, but it is useless. Before he can act, he is struck in the chest with a knife. Only after that does the criminal's number finally vanish. The following day, he went back to the same cafe he had visited before. The waitress from the day before was standing right there in front of him. On the stairs, he felt he needed to make a choice while the girl was climbing up while carrying several heavy boxes. The killer recalled the number he had seen above her head the previous day. Then she lost her footing and started to fall down the stairs. In that very moment, he noticed that her number had changed. Before she could slip all the way down the stairs, Number managed to catch the girl by the hand. Still shaken by what had almost happened, she thanked him and asked whether he was hurt. An older employee appeared, scolding the girl to be more careful while checking if the young man was all right. His thoughts were focused entirely on figuring out why the girl's number had shifted moments earlier. She looked like nothing more than an ordinary young woman, and he was certain he had seen the number 1 above her yesterday. So why had it suddenly increased? He had checked countless times and believed those numbers could never change. From the foot of the stairs, the girl apologized to him again. That was when Number learned that her name was Ji Hyun. Not long after, the older employee tried to apply eye drops to Ji Hyun's eyes. The girl, who had complained of headaches earlier, said her right eye had been aching for several days. Her coworker guessed it might be caused by the dry weather or her habit of staying up too late. Worried about Ji Hyun's eyes, she gave her some eye drops to use until she could visit a doctor. The two of them watched more TV news about crimes imitating the well-known number. When the name Hyun Chul, an old serial killer, was mentioned, the girl seemed visibly scared. She quickly made an excuse to leave, but the report about that other criminal clearly troubled her. Her coworkers said she must be heading to another part-time job, even though someone her age should be studying. As she walked down the street, she tried to steady her breathing and calm herself again. She had to hurry and reach her next workplace, but the moment she arrived, she was struck across the face for being late. Both she and her coworker were harshly scolded by their boss. Even though it was difficult, Ji Han convinced herself she could endure it. Pain would pass eventually. If she could keep working and earn money, then she would bear it. No matter how hard things became, she forced a smile and kept trying to move forward. Then a customer suddenly called out her full name, as though he knew her. The girl froze in shock, while the man told his companions that they had gone to elementary school together. Memories flashed through her mind of a school desk covered with the word killer. The customer exposed her as the daughter of Hyun Chul, the notorious serial killer from 12 years earlier. People seated at the table began laughing at her situation. Meanwhile, the customer kept saying he never expected to see her there after she had quit school. In a panic, Ji Hyun began seeing golden numbers floating above their heads. Feeling sick, she rushed out of the tent. Her eye hurt again, and she felt as though something was wrong with her body. From the top of a building, the serial killer number quietly watched her. He remembered what she had worn when he saw her before, especially the frighteningly high number of victims linked to her. It felt deeply unusual, and he began to wonder who Ji Hyun really was. On the news, Hyun Chul was shown surrounded by reporters demanding to know why he had done those. The police urged the reporters to move aside, but they kept pressing for more details about what had happened. At home in the living room, Ji Hyun watched those news reports with her mother. Unable to understand the situation, 8-year-old Ji Hyun asked her crying mother why her father was on television. Her mother was desperately making phone calls, asking for the money they were supposed to receive. At the age of 9, she had fallen into denial, terrified by the reality surrounding her. When she turned 14, other students covered her desk with insults and said she carried a killer's blood. Some parents even complained to the principal, claiming she would grow up to become someone dangerous too. Around that time, Ji Hyun tried speaking to a friend, but the girl stormed toward her in anger. Ji Hyun could not understand what was happening, and someone she had trusted struck her across the face. In the principal's office, a teacher explained that the girl had lost her brother 6 years earlier. That meant the incident might have been connected to the serial killer. The man assumed Ji Hyun must know about it because the two girls had been close. Ji Han had been too young back then. There was no way she could have understood everything. Her father had vanished when she was 6, and she only saw him again after his arrest appeared on television. The teacher told her to choose her words more carefully and try to understand the pain of the victims. Yet he never considered that her own situation was not easy either. Ji Han laughed in disbelief, wondering if she was really the one at fault here. Was she wrong for becoming friends with a victim's sister, or for having a serial killer as her father? Even so, the man kept insisting saying that she could not expect grieving people to understand her circumstances, and began saying she should not get defensive whenever she met a victim's family. But he soon realized his words had gone too far and apologized. The girl shook with anger, and the only thought that surfaced in her mind was her father's name lingering over her like a curse she could never escape. In the present, she sat in a park while people walked around her. Ji-hyun did not see people the way others did. She could also see golden numbers hovering above their heads. It made her eyes ache, and she still could not understand what was happening. She had discovered that when she narrowed her sight, the numbers would appear and draw her focus. At first, the two dots confused her, making her think they might have something to do with time. However, some numbers were far too high to represent hours, so the meaning remained a mystery, perhaps even some strange illness, though she had no idea what kind. Behind her, a young man named Baekmin appeared and asked how she was doing. She told him that a kid like him would never understand. Ji-hyun had called him to the park, so Baekmin asked why, using the chance to meet her. He then handed her some hand lotion, leaving her puzzled. After that, he reminded her that her birthday was tomorrow. In truth, he had assumed that was the reason Ji-hyun wanted to see him. Baekmin reminded her they had been friends for more than 10 years, so they should spend the day celebrating. Then he noticed his friend crying and immediately asked what had happened. She said she did not know why she had suddenly become so emotional, then thanked him for the gift. She thought back on everything that had happened during the week. Hyun-mo admitted that the past few days had been difficult. She told him about meeting an old schoolmate, which dragged her entire past back to the surface. Though she thought she had moved on, the encounter left her feeling sick and dizzy. She remembered how, back in school, several mothers went to the principal and claimed that although she was not to blame for her father, living with that reality would keep her from becoming a good person. From the moment Ji-hyun heard those words, she resolved to become the opposite, someone happy, stable, and responsible. She would never walk the same path as her father or become a murderer. Baekmin thought the whole thing was absurd. She had no reason to blame herself since she was not a murderer. Ji-hyun felt the world they lived in forced her to think that way, and a child like him could not understand it. Standing up, Ji-hyun decided they really should enjoy the day. That way, she could prove she had the strength to grow up healthy and happy. She smiled as she watched her friend debate whether they should play a board game or an online game. In the end, they chose to enjoy a game at a cafe. After that, they went to karaoke. They ate ice cream and spent the night laughing together. Everything changed when Ji-hyun saw the number above Baekmin's head. The number had decreased, and he quickly noticed her acting strangely, though she insisted nothing was wrong. Even then, he could tell something felt unusual. He also had the uneasy feeling that someone was watching them. Sure enough, men with cameras were trailing behind them, secretly recording and following their movements. Years later, Hyun-chol's daughter appeared on television. A gossip reporter claimed she was living quite happily. The video sent to them ended after showing her entering a street lined with clubs and bars. Once the video stopped, they did not know where the pair went next, though they were still teenagers getting into trouble. The gossip reporter added that the video was filmed on November 17th, only 2 days before the memorial for her father's 13 victims. She was now the same age as the little girl who had lost her life. The man said the world was unfair, because while some families no longer had their daughters, others could still laugh and live on. Trying to justify himself, he said she was not wrong for wanting to date or live her life. Even as a serial killer's daughter, he simply found the situation ironic and said the lesson of the day was that God did not exist. The reporter's YouTube video had already reached 1 million views, and many viewers agreed with what he said. Some people were disgusted, saying she would carry on her father's bloodline by marrying and having children. Other cruel commenters claimed they had been classmates of the victims and used that as a reason to resent the girl. As her friend returned home, he noticed several people causing a scene. Nearby, the police were also scolding a man who had been making trouble in the street. Other people in the YouTube comments accused the story of being fake news, saying she may not even carry the DNA linked to psychopathy. Some insisted as biological, meaning a person inevitably ends up just like their parents. At that moment, the boy steps into Ajumeoni's house, the home of Ji-hyun's mother. It had been a long time since they last met, and just as long since he had visited her place. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun sits in her room, sadly reading through every YouTube comment. She asks whether he properly hid his face so the paparazzi would not spot him. After all, if he is caught on camera entering her house, it will cause serious trouble, and people will claim they are living together. Ji-hyun is deeply upset with people, because they do not know anything about her. She is convinced those former classmates followed her and took the photos. Baekmin says he understands her feelings, tells her to calm down, and adds that she does not need to read comments from fools. After all, once there is no more drama to feed on, those people will eventually disappear. Ji-hyun feels betrayed by comments about inherited crime, karma, and never growing up normally, knowing words like that could truly push her toward the wrong path. Once she lives happily and stays healthy, they will curse her simply because she is happy. She wonders what she is working for and what she is trying to prove while forcing herself to smile like nothing is wrong. Just then, her mother comes into the room because outside, people are throwing stones at their window. Ajumeoni apologizes to Baek Min for the people outside and Ji Hyun's behavior, saying she should stay beside her daughter but must work all night. He reassures her that exams are happening, so she should not worry. Before leaving, her mother tells him not to go outside if possible, and to call if anything happens. Then she notices numbers appearing above his head once again. The girl becomes frightened when she sees that countdown above her friend Baek Min again. As the numbers begin to decrease, fear takes over, and she tries to tell him not to leave the house. Later, he searches her home for ingredients but finds nothing suitable for dinner. He realizes the people who had been throwing stones at her window are gone, so he tells his friend he will quickly head down to the convenience store. Seeing that she has fallen asleep, he leaves as quietly as he can. However, the men who had thrown the stones suddenly catch him off guard and corner him. They stop him from closing the door and begin forcing their way in, asking whether he is her relative or boyfriend. The men even know his name and start recording Baek Min's face, demanding to know whether the girl is inside. He warns them that they are crossing the line and says he will call the police for filming and harassing them. But his warning does nothing. The men force the door open and begin entering the apartment. One extremely strong man slams his hand against the door, stopping Baek Min from shutting it. The unstable man says that many years ago, his daughter was also around 18 years old. She had been a sweet young girl, yet Ji Hyun's father was the reason she was taken from him. Baek Min pieces everything together and realizes this man is seeking revenge while completely losing control. Once inside the house, he starts asking where the girl is and which room belongs to her. With disturbing thoughts filling his head, he even seems pleased to learn the serial killer had a daughter. He says he suffered greatly because of it, but now his chance for revenge has finally arrived. And he takes out a hammer. His friend places a hand on the furious man's shoulder and tells him to stop. But the man is in no mood to listen and immediately attacks Baek Min. Someone in the group warns that he will get in trouble for using violence. At that moment, the girl wakes up and sees the chaos unfolding inside her room. The man seeking revenge tells Baek Min not to stand in his way. Baek Min lies motionless on the floor. The man says he will make her repay the pain he endured in equal measure. The girl sees her friend's countdown has fallen to just 1 minute. At last, everything becomes clear to her. She can see every hour, minute, and second left for her friend, his remaining life ticking down like a clock nearing its end. He finally understands that no matter who these people are, they will always see her as the serial killer's daughter. They need revenge, or someone to blame, and will always treat her as if she might become just like her father one day. Without hesitation, the girl says that if this is what they expect from her, then she will give it to them. She grabs a knife, ready to end the men herself. But at that moment, the number criminal appears and stops her. Everyone inside the house freezes in shock at the sight of this madman. He asks Ji Hyun if those are truly her final words. Without waiting for her answer, he attacks her with the knife, claiming she was destined to become just like her father. Everything ends up online because the men had started a live stream. Viewers are stunned as the man with the hammer seeks revenge, screaming that making the girl pay for his pain is only fair. With countless people watching, the live stream captured everything. That lasted only until she suddenly drew the knife, but the numbers criminal was clever, so he destroyed the phones to erase any evidence. He grabbed the girl's arm before she could act. Wondering what had pushed Ji Hyun so close to becoming a criminal, he questioned whether she had inherited her father's nature, or whether everyone simply expected her to. Without giving it much thought, the numbers madman took her to face her father on another plane. After all, that matter had nothing to do with him. He was simply carrying out the mission placed before him. Once he finishes the job, the others stare at him in terror and begin talking about escaping as quickly as possible. Because the man's knife is stained with ketchup, one of them runs away, complaining loudly that his camera is gone. The man seeking revenge is stunned when he sees that the girl has been hurt, so he tries to end things while she lies on the floor, but the numbers man steps in and stops him. He says that, unfortunately, he has to do the same thing. Still, he spares the man because only the number one is above his head. Meanwhile, the girl on the floor asks who the scarred man really is. Seeing she is still alive, he realizes his blade was not very sharp, and the numbers above her head have not vanished either. That makes her realize he can see the numbers as well, just like she can. She notices his eyes shining with a blue glow. The man still sees many numbers over her head. In the future, she would claim 4,000 lives, making her resemble the Black Death. The report goes on, saying the only shared detail among the victims was the numbers marked on their skin. We still do not know the man's motive, what the numbers mean, or any more than the same old story, already repeated. At that instant, as her life flashes before her eyes, the girl finally understands everything. She realizes that sometime in the future, she would take 4,000 lives, though she has no idea how it would happen. She also understands that this man has come for people like her, those destined to become dangerous criminals. Her sight slowly begins to fade, and she sees the remaining time before her eyes. Only 30 seconds are left. Her friend still has 50 seconds. This fills her with sorrow, because she does not want Baekmin to disappear, yet she has no idea what she can do. With only 20 seconds remaining, she desperately searches for some way to save her friend. As usual, the scarred man asks whether she has any final words. Using the last of her strength, she asks why he spared the man who attacked Baekmin. Our favorite anti-hero knows this is a question she would almost never understand. He finds the girl odd, since this is what she chooses to ask while standing at heaven's doorstep. He explains that, under his strange rule, people marked with the number 1 are not targets, since their outcome will not change because of it. After giving that same explanation, one he has repeated countless times, the girl finally understands and closes her eyes. At that moment, he tightens his grip around the knife. As Ji-hyun grows weaker and starts losing consciousness, something unusual suddenly happens. It is enough to completely frighten the masked man. The number that had once stood at 4,000 starts shifting, then drops sharply. It continues falling until it reaches 1, just as the girl is almost gone. This makes our antihero recall a conversation he once had with a woman. She told him he was the only person capable of completing his mission, and that he would carry it out no matter what, unless he could prove the numbers were able to fall. If that happened, he would not finish the task. Just then, the man seeking revenge appears behind him with a hammer. However, our anti-hero is incredibly strong and he manages to block the blow from that Thor-like hammer. The man shouts that he alone will be the one to take the girl's life. At that very moment, the number above her head climbs to 2, while he declares this is his only reason for living and prepares to attack the masked man too. The masked man is stunned to see the number rise so suddenly as he takes in the situation. He finds an opening, twists the hammer out of the man's grip, and then throws him down to the ground. At the same time, he recalls another case where the numbers had also increased. He decides to think about that later and act according to the new change. Just then, the man gets back up and tries to attack the unconscious girl lying on the floor. So he does what he does best and sends the man off in dramatic fashion. After that, the police begin making their way toward the scene, with 2 people lying on the ground and the other man nearly ending up in the same condition. The masked man found it fascinating that her number had suddenly dropped from 4,000 to 1. He wondered who this girl really was and why only she had experienced such an impossible change. As the police drew closer, he said he had made his decision and already had a plan in mind. So he rescued the girl, placed her in his car, and drove away. With her beside him, he set off in his dark, highly suspicious-looking car. The girl remained inside the vehicle, still only half-conscious, until a sharp wave of pain hit her. She opened her eyes and wondered where she had been taken. After stepping out of the car, she found herself in an unfamiliar place with a damaged building or ruined house nearby. She remembered being at home the previous day with her friend Baekmin. Then, without warning, the man with the scar appeared. Memories of the previous night began returning to her. Our dear antihero noticed that she had woken up earlier than he expected. Terrified of him and remembering what he had done, she tried to run away. A rope snagged around her foot, stopped her from getting far, and he told her not to waste her strength and to go inside his house. While handling his tasks, the man said he did not plan to hurt her, but he wanted her to stay quiet. The girl did as she was told and waited in the car while he went about doing some very unsettling things. She remembered that this man had repeatedly shown up at the diner where she worked. Before long, she connected everything and realized he was the infamous criminal known as Number. She also understood that he targeted people who had numbers floating above their heads. She recalled him speaking about the 4,000 lives she was supposedly going to take. So she asked whether she had really committed such an act. But the man, annoyingly precise, kept correcting her with the exact number of people she was destined to harm. He then explained that people with the number 1 above their heads were not meant to be removed. Strangely, after hearing his answer, she felt as if she suddenly understood how to avoid becoming his target, almost as though escaping him should be simple. On top of that, Baekmin was alive only because of her. Originally, the boy was supposed to fall because of that man, and because of that, he would have been dragged into the same fate as her. Yet somehow, almost like a miracle, she changed fate and brought her number down to 1. That man had been meant to survive and shape a different future. But once his number rose to 2, he became the antihero's next target. At that point, she realized her friend had survived because the masked man had completed his mission. He admitted he had ended that man's path, and before he stepped in, she had nearly lost her own life as well. Ji-hyun asked whether that man's number had gone down a little before he died, just like hers had. Our Punisher asked if she was blaming him, even though she had tried to take that man's life herself. Explained that once a number appeared, It was never supposed to change, and that was what she failed to understand. Whether someone gets hurt, falls apart like broken Lego, or ends up restrained, the number is never supposed to shift. No matter what happens, those numbers are fated to reach their appointed count. Somehow, as if by magic, she had managed to reduce hers. In a dark tone, he asked if she understood what her existence meant to him. After all, nothing like this had ever happened before, and he started driving toward an unknown destination. Ji Hyun asked where he was taking her. The masked man replied that he did not know yet, and was simply driving without a clear destination. He said he could not allow someone like her to wander freely, whether she agreed or not. Still, he told Ji Hyun she was free to choose and try her hardest to escape him. She could return to her old life, but from then on, she would always be running. She would also have to prove her innocence, while everyone around her pointed accusing fingers. Or she could simply follow her fate and become the person everyone already expected her to be. When he asked what she would choose, the girl panicked and tried to block out his words. Telling herself she had to escape somehow, she asked him to take her back to her house. She said she would even stay with him. But first she needed some things, and had to see her mother. Growing more frightened, she said she needed to collect her clothes and other belongings. Ji-hyun thought the plan would fail, but surprisingly he accepted her suggestion. So he drove her home, and the girl tried to slip inside without drawing attention. Ji-hyun assumed the crime scene had already been cleaned up by then. Besides, the anti-hero had parked the car in a place with no cameras. He told her to return within 30 minutes, without letting anyone catch sight of her. At that moment, the girl slips into her house by stepping over the crime scene tape. She quickly gathers emergency supplies, clothes, and other necessities while desperately thinking of how to keep away from that man. She considers heading in the opposite direction first, then finding a way to escape. Still, the girl begins wondering where she is supposed to go after that. But someone is watching her through the crack of the door in an unsettling way. The numbers criminal says that if she comes back, she will have passed the test. But if she tries to run from him, things will end badly for her, and she will fail. At that exact moment, someone suddenly appears, lurking nearby. A broken bottle is clutched tightly in their hand, and the person abruptly barges into her house. The sudden intrusion terrifies the girl completely. He lifts the broken bottle over his head as if preparing to attack. The girl cries out in pure panic. Then, all at once, she realizes the person is her friend Baekmin. He is shocked to find Ji-hyun alive in front of him. Then he asks what she is doing inside her own house. He explains that he heard the police had left, so he came back to retrieve a backpack he had forgotten. But when he noticed the door was open and someone was inside, he grabbed the broken bottle. For a moment, he thought those unstable people had returned, so he apologizes for frightening her. The girl touches his face, notices the bandage, and says it happened because of her. The boy turns a little flustered and red as she asks if he is hurt, but Baekmin says it is only a scratch. Trying to change the topic, her friend asks where she has been during the days she was missing. He adds that he is genuinely relieved to see her alive after she disappeared. The media and the public have been spreading rumors that she ran from the crime scene because she was connected to the numbers criminal. A detective had also given him a card earlier and told him to call. He was supposed to contact them if he knew anything and share every detail about what had happened. Then he notices the girl looking gloomy while carrying a suitcase. Baekmin asks why she has packed so much luggage. The girl gives him no answer. He simply walks toward the door. Baekmin desperately asks what is going on and where Ji-hyun is planning to go. Ji-hyun asks what he thinks he is doing, since he saw what happened that day, and was even injured. While in the hospital, he watched the video to confirm what happened, including the moment the man hit him with a hammer and the other warned against violence. But just as the girl was about to go after the man, the live stream suddenly cut off. He asked the detective what happened after that. The man picked up his yo-yo. He said the phone had been destroyed, so the live stream ended right there. However, according to online commenters, it seemed to be the work of the numbers criminal. They still do not know whether Ji-hyun is alive, and if she is, no one knows where she has gone, leaving many questions unanswered. In any case, after the video ended, the public began blaming the girl and pointing fingers at her. Since he is her friend, the detective asked him to persuade her, especially because they still know nothing about the numbers guy. On a street lit only by a single lamppost, the girl says she is leaving before the police arrive. Baekmin asks she is running and demands to know whether she really did something to that man. He believes she did not do it, so he cannot understand why she is fleeing if she is innocent, and he wants to know where she is going. She remembers number warning her that if she chose not to stay with him, she would always be chased and forced to prove her innocence. But Baekmin says she has no need to prove anything to him, because he knows she did not inherit her father's nature. He tells her to let people say what they want, because deep down, he is certain she would never do something like that. The girl shouts that he is wrong, because this is not about proving anything. It is not that simple, because in that moment she had not wanted to stop the man or save Baekmin from him. She simply wanted him gone completely. and she knew she was thinking clearly. She had not been trying to save anyone. She starts to believe the rumors may be right, that she truly is like her father and carries his issues with her. Those destined crimes are the reason the masked man can see numbers above her head and above others. If her father is not the reason, then there must be some other cause. She apologizes for being his best friend and begins walking away. Baek Min stands there, heartbroken, telling her to come back, while thinking this is what happens when someone likes a troubled girl. Ji Hyun says she does not want hurt because of her, and he should not waste his life on someone like her. Her best friend says his mother collapsed and is now in the hospital, so he cannot break her heart again. Those words strike the girl deeply. She recalls how her mother reacted when the news about her father reached them. Through tears, her mother said it would become another reason people believed she was like her father. Even so, she says she wants to see her mother one final time, but after that she walks away and gets inside. To the car belonging to our anti-hero, he tells her she is late and says he thought she had run away. The girl calls him master and says he is capable of removing potential criminals. Our vigilant replies that someone has to do it, and he is the only one who can. Ji Hyun asks whether, as long as she stays with him, she does not need to fear taking anyone's life. The scarred man says she need not worry, because if he sees the number above her head rise, he will deal with her immediately. As they drive away, the girl stays quiet and thoughtful, oddly calm beside this madman with righteous intentions. Meanwhile, that strange yo-yo detective enters her house. They determine that the girl is still alive and wonder why she is sneaking around her own home like this. The detective expects to get answers from the security camera system soon. At that moment, he picks up photos of the girl at the diner and also notices numbers above her head. His red eyes are revealed, just like Number's blue eyes and Ji Hyun's yellow ones. Somewhere in a dark hallway, someone begins calling emergency services. They give their address and explain what is happening. In a whisper, they say there is someone standing behind their door. They beg for help to arrive as quickly as possible. The police officer says a patrol will be sent to her address. The girl keeps asking why they cannot simply arrest the maniac waiting outside her door. The police tell her to stay calm, saying he may only be lingering in the hallway and might not hurt her. For now, they cannot arrest someone based only on suspicion. Desperate, the woman asks if they plan to wait until he harms her before doing anything. After that unsettling moment, we see the two of them on the road 9 hours later. They pull over for a while to eat and rest along the roadside. She asks whether he eats anything besides cereal. Ignoring the question, the anti-hero tells her to check a drawer, but the girl keeps bothering him about his diet, until he admits he also eats eggs and chicken, though he does not really enjoy the taste. He says what truly matters is maintaining a routine and repeating it without fail. To him, the most irritating thing is when unexpected variables disrupt that routine. Today is November 24th, the 4th day since she began traveling with the serial killer known as Number. Even so, she insists she is only staying beside him and not actually doing anything herself. As Number gets out of the car, he tells her not to wander outside because the police already know her face. He adds that if he does not return within an hour, she can leave and choose her own path. The girl notes that his routine never changes. He stops in a dark alley, then heads to a fairly empty area and searches through the crowd for his next target. Ji-hen remembers that he used to do the same thing at the restaurant where she worked. She also recalls the warm memories she shared with her coworkers. It makes her question whether she is truly walking the right path. And beyond that, what path is she even following at all? At night, the man appears again. He startles the girl while changing out of clothes, stained with what looks like tomato sauce. The sight leaves the girl feeling somewhat unsettled. Number says he put 2 people to sleep. Both were planning gatherings, one involving 5 people and the other involving 3. He says they had to be placed in their coffins today. Even though he did not want to resort to force, suddenly the girl begins to feel a headache. Then a yellow beam appears before her like a vision. Time appears above the antihero's head, and she finally understands what the yellow numbers mean. They show the amount of time a person has left to live. Kinder asks her what she is seeing in her vision. Ji-hein tries to act clueless and pretends she has no idea what he means. In truth, she has no real reason to hide anything from him, but fear takes over. Deep inside, she feels that telling him would not lead to anything good. Meanwhile, the man falls into thought and remembers his past. Back then, as a child, he used to complain that something strange was happening with his eyes. He realized the same thing is happening to the girl, just as he had suspected. A day passes, and he parks the car once more in a secluded alley. He says he needs to buy a few things and will return in an hour or 2. At that moment, the girl's eye activates, and she begins seeing the remaining lifespans of the people around her. There are 2 numbers, and the one on the right drops at a different pace each time. Since the units are different, seeing 1 and 5 before someone dies means 1 minute and 5 seconds. The 3 and 31 that appeared earlier above Baek Min Min meant 3 hours and 31 minutes. If the scale stretches further, the earlier 3 and 2 would mean 3 days and 2 hours. If extended even more, those numbers might represent months or possibly even years. In this situation, she tries to read the numbers above the family standing before her. she notices that the woman named Yoon Seon looks seriously unwell. The girl feels irritated, thinking Yoon Seon must not be eating properly while living by herself. Sure enough, the woman looks completely worn out. This connects back to the beginning. It reveals that she is the same girl who had been chased. Back then, the man outside her door kept pounding on it, daring her to call the police while threatening to come inside and harm her. He kept warning her to find out what would happen if she dared to cross him. The man then began threatening her whole family with a truly Joker-like mindset. After that, she sees that every member of the family has 8 and 31 above their heads. It looks as though the man who threatened her at night will actually get what he wanted. And sure enough, among the crowd, that hooded man is walking forward to keep his promise. Things will not be so easy, because our anti-hero has already noticed him. He spots the number 3 above the man's head. Then he says he has finally found him. When she sees that the family's numbers are all the same, the girl becomes frightened and tries to figure out what is happening. Judging by how fast the right side numbers are dropping, they are not seconds. The event will happen in 8 hours and 30 minutes. The little girl keeps asking her mother to take her to the mall. Meanwhile, Ji-Hyun wonders what she should do. Even if she follows them, there may be little she can do to help. Still acting on impulse, she gets out of the car and begins following the family. From the rooftop, the serial killer sees Ji-Hyun running and briefly thinks she may be escaping. But then he realizes she is actually chasing someone. Putting the clues together, he understands she is following the family being hunted by the other man. At the same time, he keeps watching the man with the number 3 above his head. At last, he locates him. Meanwhile, the family heads into the mall to shop. Annie, the mother, begins receiving several messages and blocks them one after another. The man says she should report the stalker, who keeps calling her to the police. She realizes the maniac has posted her number in public places, so strangers will keep messaging her. He has even made reservations and placed her name with funeral services. This forces her to keep blocking everything. Old man needs to understand what this lunatic wants from her. However, the woman has no idea what to do, which is why she remains there without taking action. Even so, she plans to stay there until she is able to move, but she wants to keep the little girl from finding out. Ji-Hyun understands that the woman is being hunted by a stalker. That means her entire family will also become targets of this unstable person. Ji-Hyun feels this is unfair, especially because the child is still so young. Just then, the serial killer appears like a ninja, saying there are 3 targets, including a child. Startled by his sudden arrival, the girl hears the antihero ask what numbers she sees above their heads. There is no point hiding it, since she can see numbers too, which is why she followed the family without a clear plan. The girl asks how he figured that out. The man with the number explains it was the eye pain she felt earlier, along with the way she kept glancing above his head. He says it seemed strange from the start, because even with the idea of afterlife doors, Ji-Hyun accepted the numbers far too easily. He wonders whether she should tell him everything, since there is no real reason to keep hiding the truth now. Meanwhile, the mother talks with her daughter Min-seo. Afterward, they decide to leave the mall and go on their way. Moji considers asking a question, but realizes it would draw attention and holds back. And she begins telling the truth to the serial killer with the number. He finds it fascinating that she can see how much time people have left. Though she is not fully certain, she believes this family will die in 8 hours and 31 minutes. By then, the entire family will have crossed over by around 10 p.m. She also overheard a conversation about a stalker who keeps harassing the woman. It may be the stalker's doing, and the man with the number is convinced it is definitely him. When the girl asks how he can be so certain, the answer is, the antihero says the man is watching them from above, and the number 3 over his head cannot be a coincidence. After all, it matches the exact number of people in that family. When the girl considers running after them, the serial killer stops her before she can act. The girl thinks she has to warn the family and tell them the stalker is upstairs in the mall, so they can report him to the police. Despite all his warnings, the man with the number grows angry because the girl still fails to understand him. But just then, someone bumps into Yoon Seon. Her shopping bags spill onto the floor. The mother of the family thanks the people who step in to help her. But suddenly, she notices something that sends her into panic, and she screams. Her family tries to figure out what is wrong as she becomes hysterical. Then she starts pointing toward the stalker watching from the upper floor. She cries, asking why he is at the same mall as her. Number man says she has achieved what she wanted, since the family has already noticed him. At that moment, Moji realizes the numbers above their heads have shifted, have changed to 7 hours and 4 minutes. Even though she remembers numbers saying those figures should never change. No matter what they do, their fate remains the same unless the man acts within those 7 hours. The only exception is if the serial killer number steps in and deals with the lunatic himself. The man says her ability to see when someone's time will end is extremely useful. If the clock freezes, their remaining time has not changed, so there is no need to rush when they know he still has 7 hours. Meanwhile, he will prepare as he always does, and he asks Ji-Hyun to keep following the 3 of them. She must stay as discreet as possible, or the stalker will notice her and become cautious. Then she asks how they are supposed to stay in contact when he removed the chip. chip from her phone. The serial killer says he already placed a tracker on her phone, so he can always know where she is. Shocked, the girl asks if he is serious and calls it disturbing. He always said she could run, but never promised he would truly let her go. Even so, she remains by his side by choice, admitting that he never forced her to help him with this. Ji-hyun then realizes she has ended up assisting the serial killer number in his crimes. He says she can refuse if she wants, since he would rather act alone than have her become a hindrance. The girl struggles to accept that everything will only end if the stalker is gone. She asks why her number has not changed after all this. If she locked the door and reported him, the stalker should not be able to do anything. First, the police can only respond after something happens, not fully prevent it before the act takes place. Second, he senses a strange devotion coming from the stalker. It feels as though the man has carefully planned this entire scheme for a long time, so simply locking the apartment door would not be enough to stop someone like him. Time passes, and only 1 hour and 15 minutes remain for that family. At that moment, the father complains to the police for leaving so soon. They say that if the stalker appears, they can take action and place an electronic ankle monitor on him. Since he has not shown himself since the mall sighting, they believe there is nothing to worry about for now. The police ask them to keep wearing the watch they gave them, and to stay inside the house as much as possible. They say they will make one final patrol before leaving and will alert them if they find anything. As the officers leave, someone watches from behind a grate, but it is not the stalker. It is actually Ji-hyun. The girl feels relieved once the police finally leave. She sees that the area below the construction site is empty, which makes her glad. She remembers the number man telling her that if she had doubts, she could confirm things herself. Since she is on the highest floor, the incident should not happen. That is, as long as she keeps watch in front of the door. She feels uneasy about the idea of someone losing their life. But as the antihero said, that person has to disappear if 3 innocent people are to be saved. Even if she cannot do it herself, she has to support the number man somehow. With only 39 minutes left before the incident, the stalker arrives at the family's building. He walks in carrying a toolbox, then stops in front of the door beside their home. He takes out adhesive tape and presses it along the outside of the door. While the girl wonders what he is trying to do, he covers the grates, then uses a tool to break the glass as quietly as possible. That is how he slips into one of the building's floors. He moves carefully through the area without making a sound, and the girl realizes that he has disappeared. Now, only 26 minutes remain before the incident. Inside the apartment, the woman begins to notice a strange smell, almost like leaking gas. She finds it odd, since she does not remember leaving the kitchen gas turned on. That moment, Moji slips inside without making a sound. Meanwhile, the father asks whether they had left the window open. She then realizes it is the same window he broke to let the gas in. When she reaches the spot, she discovers a gas cylinder connected to the apartment to trigger an explosion. Yet the man had not actually left. Instead, he ends up entering through another window. While the girl tries to attach the gas hose, she hears screams, then hurriedly pulls the hose away from the apartment. The girl starts shouting desperately for someone to open the door. At that moment, the mother hears her and becomes even more terrified. After all, her father had just been attacked by the crazed man. Completely unhinged, the man then takes the daughter hostage as well. He laughs and says it has been a long time since they last met. He asks how she dared to run after he begged for mercy, saying he had warned her he would end everything there. He shouts that if she keeps treating him like garbage, things will turn ugly for her. In the middle of this family crisis and madness, something suddenly happens that makes everyone freeze. The man is about to strike the woman, but stops when a sound comes from above. The sound is from Moji, whose phone has started vibrating. A message from the number's serial killer tells her to report everything to the police. Seeing it came from a phone without a SIM card, she understands who sent it and what the number's serial killer meant earlier. Using the stalker's brief distraction, the mother throws herself at him. She manages to knock him down and save her daughter. The girl runs outside to call the police. At that moment, she opens the door. Ji-hyun is standing behind it and gets struck in the face by the door. The stalker then roughly drags the mother by her hair. Ji-hyun watches the scene unfold, visibly shaken. Then the man pulls out a weapon that is clearly not meant for cutting chicken. At that instant, the heroine appears and sprays gas into the lunatic's face. Everyone nearby starts coughing, and he is unable to move properly either. Seeing the timer above the woman's head drop even further, she tells her mother to run. After all, they have only 12 minutes and 47 seconds left. The stalker had not expected another guest at his twisted gathering, so he snaps and yells at her, asking why she is going this far. At that moment, the lunatic realizes she must be the one who has been following him. He asks what she plans to do and whether she intends to report him to the police too. It becomes clear then that he is the ex-boyfriend of the woman in this family. He even says that what is about to happen would make a great news story. That is why he tells them to go ahead, because he does not care, and no one will stop what he plans to do. By the time the police arrive, he says, it will already be too late for all of them. The moment he rushes toward the daughter, Ji-hun manages to shove him away. She wonders how many more people will suffer because of awful men like him and her father. In doing so, she helps the family's daughter escape while choosing to remain behind. The crazed stalker screams for the girl to come back, but what he does not expect, that Batman is right behind him, or rather, their number's anti-hero. The hero appears just long enough to frighten him, then disappears again. Like Batman, he keeps unsettling the man by hiding within the shadows. Then the hallway light, which had gone out, suddenly turns back on. Before the stalker can convince himself it was all in his imagination, a serial killer appears before him. He grabs the maniac and slams him against the wall. Then he takes his knife and raises it as if the man were meat prepared for a barbecue. He tells him to answer his question once the pain fades enough. Then he asks the stalker whether he has any last words. The man ignores him and reaches for his weapon again, trying to attack Number. But the anti-hero continues his Batman-like act and disappears once more. This only makes the stalker grow even more paranoid. He then starts running toward the mother, his former girlfriend. Before he can get anywhere near her, Number strikes him from behind with a powerful kick. Moji is left completely startled. Then the Number throws the gas cylinder straight at him. He says none of this would have happened if the man had behaved from the beginning. Meanwhile, the lunatic is left on the ground, writhing in pain. It makes him wonder who these people really are. He gets back up with the gas cylinder in his hands and rushes toward the girl protected by the Number. Before the impact, a thought flashes through her mind. She says she never wanted to become like her father, and maybe that was why she followed the numbered serial killer. She could have easily thrown away the tracked phone and escaped from him. She wonders whether fear kept her from running, thinking the Number might hunt her down. Or maybe she had been waiting for an answer that only this man could give her. And at that exact moment, the Number saves her from being struck. When he took the man down, she finally understood. She had wanted a reason to commit crimes through his twisted belief of removing people to save others. At that moment, the Number takes off his mask and asks his usual question one final time. She wonders whether she truly believed that such twisted logic could change the future. Perhaps deep down, she wanted a world where the people she loved would not suffer because of evil people like the man chasing them. Just then, our favorite anti-hero with a superhero complex asks whether the man has any final words. Upstairs, the woman tries to pull herself together, but she is crying heavily. Moji asks if she can stand, then helps her up. Once she rises and leans on the girl for support, she asks who they are. Ji-hyun helps the woman along and tells her not to mention seeing them once the police arrive. Even if things are not that simple, she should also avoid telling the police what this appears to be. The woman from the family seems to understand something about the people who rescued her. After some time, she returns home and finds her father on the couch, badly injured. While her father complains about the pain, Ji-hyun watches the scene with visible irritation. The scarred man says his injuries are not fatal and he will live with treatment. Of course, this is possible because he handled the numbers. That means the pursuer has been defeated and now lies on the ground in agony and barely holding on. Girl notices he is still alive and says that without her interference, he would have carried out his plan. He asks whether she has any idea who she just crossed. He calls her a terrible kind of girl, and she asks what kind he means, even though she is not truly interested. After all, she does not care who he is or what happened in his past. What matters is that she has no interest in the judgment of a maniac who would even target a child. Lying battered on the floor, the man curses and says she knows nothing about his life. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun tells the serial killer that the police should arrive soon, so they need to leave. He tells her to go first while he listens to the stalker's final words. Although he knows there is not much time, he believes he can still manage it. She asks if he is serious about always asking these criminals for their last words. The mysterious man says he would not ask every time if he did not mean it. Ji-hyun asks why he bothers listening to people like that. He tells her to go outside if she does not want to hear it, and she obeys. She stands on top of the building and sees police cars rushing toward the building, arriving much faster than expected. She cannot understand why he is so fixated on the final words of people like them, especially when they should be escaping from the police right now. She goes back to warn him about the police and arrives just as he finishes dealing with the man. She spots ropes and a belt on the floor, though she does not fully understand their purpose. The numbered serial killer says he had prepared them there ahead of time, considering the layout of the area. Once their work was done, they might be caught by the police, or their faces might be captured by security cameras. That is why he suggests they jump from that height using ropes, almost like Batman. She realizes this is the escape route he planned, but she still does not want to do it. Then he fastens the rope securely to the pipe. He places it over his back while Hein-mo clings tightly so she will not fall. The girl is completely panicked, but this is their only way to escape. They keep rappelling downward because the man is clearly a huge Batman fan. He handles every step carefully so the security cameras will not catch them. Waiting for the precise moment when moths pass in front of the camera, drops down with full force, letting his foot slip free. He allows his body to slide down the rope, moving at high speed, leaving the girl utterly terrified. He grips the rope tightly and braces his feet against the wall to build more momentum. In this way, they begin climbing down the outside of the building without being noticed. Afterward, the case is reported with details about the street and time, and the police describe it as a stalking case. The scene was first discovered by an officer and his superintendent. Judging from the injuries and the number marked on the victim's wrist, the case was linked to the serial killer known as Number. By the next morning, several police cars are already at the scene to investigate. Among them is the detective who also possesses an ocular ability. His partner is there too, aware that another case by the same number criminal has appeared. Detective studies the security camera footage carefully. His assistant calls out to him and asks what he is doing. Sunbae says he is watching the clouds and trying to imagine their shapes. She brings footage from nearby security cameras and explains that they could not manage all of it alone. He then asks her to hide his yo-yo before the boss sees it, while she tells him he should throw it away soon. Meanwhile, the police continue working nearby. The forensic team examines the crime scene. They say they found no useful clues this time, because the fire extinguisher erased the fingerprints. All they have are prints from the family victims, and the already deceased pursuer. Sunbae politely asks Detective Moon whether he can tell him where the family victims are now. Moon says the father is in the hospital and the family is probably with him, then gives the red-eyed detective the address. The detective says Sunbae cannot simply enter crime scenes whenever he wants while everyone is working hard. He also needs to act responsibly and avoid contaminating evidence with dirty shoes. The red-eyed detective says he came at a bad time and interrupted their hard work, and he leaves with his assistant to review the security camera footage. As he walks away, he sarcastically wishes everyone a wonderful day at work. Some detectives say there is no need to get so angry at someone who only gets in the way, while another thinks he is actually decent. That only irritates his partner. Sunbae's partner says they really seem to hate him, and the detective says he understands why. He only wanted to make friends, but they never gave him the chance. At that moment, he activates his red-eyed ocular ability. Then he begins analyzing the video. His partner asks if they should go to the hospital, but he says not yet. She asks whether he minds if she takes a look. Then she takes the footage from his hand. She spots a hooded man who seems familiar to her, even though his face has not been shown yet. She concludes that it is clearly the Number criminal entering the building at 10 o'clock that night. The problem is that none of the security footage she provided shows him leaving the building. He asks if she can figure out how they escaped. His assistant suggests that they must have used the roof. However, there is also a chance he escaped through a lower floor. That would make sense if they considered the resident witnesses and the blind spots in the cameras. When they reach the roof and notice marks on the pipes, he determined that this is exactly where it happened. He cannot understand why the fourth floor cameras failed to catch him if he descended that way, so he decides to review the footage from that moment again. He notices that several insects blocked the view in the recording at that exact time. Right during the escape, moths flew in front of the camera. Sunbae studies the camera's range and the blind spots around it. He also considers where the witnesses were looking at that precise moment. When the power returned, a sudden flash of light stirred up a swarm of moths, and they blocked the camera for several seconds. All these details fit together now, but no one could know them unless they were the one carrying out the act. This convinces him that the man always finds a way out, choosing the safest, most efficient route no one else would imagine. Or perhaps he is able to predict the future. His partner asks whether his ocular ability is similar to Detective Sunbae's. At night, the family is seen at the hospital. The detective calls over the girl who survived so they can talk. He tells her to stay calm, saying he only wants to ask a few questions. With his ocular ability active, he sees the numbers 2, 3, 1, 0, and 3. When he asks how she feels, the woman says she is fine and doing better. At that moment, the final number above her head, which had been 3, changes to 2. He knows she understands she can no longer lie and must answer every question truthfully. The girl accepts this, as we see the detective's evidence notebook containing a photo. On average, how many lies does a person tell in one day? He believes it is around 2 or 3 times. However, he says that depending on their job, some people may lie as many as 200 times a day. In any case, whether out of habit or necessity, lies can sometimes help people escape sudden situations, even when those lies come from simple malice or a harmful, twisted nature. The reasons people lie vary widely, so statistics alone mean little when trying to see through someone's falsehoods. What matters is being able to see an estimate of how many lies a person will tell in the future. In moments like that, you can glimpse a person's true nature. As for the man's build, he was probably around 1.8 meters tall, if that matches the person she saw. The woman says yes. and the detective assumes she never saw the man's face. She explains that she did not see him, since it was dark and her memory is unclear. When he sees that the number does not decrease, he understands she was not lying at that moment. Then he asks whether the man had already subdued the stalker by then, and whether she knows what time it happened. The woman believes it happened not long after the lights went out, so the detective estimates it was roughly 3 to 5 minutes later, and the woman confirms it. This confirms the criminal entered the apartment when the power went out at 10 p.m., and if they change their assumption, it means he escaped after looking into the future. Once the moths had already covered the security cameras, that would have been the moment the man left the apartment. While speaking with the woman, he concludes the man left 30 minutes later, since the stalker had been subdued within 5 minutes of his entry. He asks what the man did during the 15 minutes that remain unaccounted for. The woman says she is not sure because she only briefly ran toward him and stayed in the hallway the entire time. At that instant, another number drops, revealing that she has just lied. She claims that by the time she returned home, he was already gone, but Sunbae is certain she is hiding the truth. He knows she lied about running to him and speaking with him, because in reality, she stayed inside her home with the criminal the whole time. He realizes she does not want the police to know this, and he needs to find out why. After that, he shifts the conversation back to her being targeted by a stalker. He mentions the portable rope ladder and gas canister, which showed the stalker had planned carefully for the situation. Feeling uneasy about the stalker topic, the woman asks what any of that has to do with the case. The detective is simply trying to understand the criteria the number maniac uses when choosing victims to follow. He asks Yoon-seon why she became the victim of this stalker. He says she can tell him even if she only has a rough idea. The girl says she does not want to answer, because the topic is too stressful. Looking straight into her eyes, he understands she is simply refusing the question. Because of that, he cannot count it as a lie. He knows he could keep pressing her, but she would resist him even more, so he decides to ask only one final question. He asks whether she knows the girl in the photo who works at a diner. She immediately remembers the woman telling her to pretend she had not seen her once the police arrived. However, while speaking to the detective, she admits that she has seen the woman before, but she says it was only on the news. She knows the girl is the daughter of that psychopath, Ji Hyun-cheol. In doing so, she manages to get around the detective's lie detection. The trick works because she only leaves out one fact. The detective says she is right, but he is sure the girl's face was blurred in the news. Yoon-seon tries to explain herself, saying she saw the report recently, then asks Sunbae to stop suspecting her. She says a victim like her would have no reason to lie, and his eyes even begin to shine. The detective recalls watching the security footage and noticing something. It was the psychopath's daughter on the stairs of the building. He says many people nearly lost their lives, and the only shared point was that they all survived thanks to number. Perhaps, without realizing it, they want to repay what he did for them, or maybe they are trying to hide something even from themselves. That is why he plans to ask the woman one more time, not about what she saw in the news or reports, but whether she saw the girl on the day of the incident. After this interrogation, the scene shifts to the inside of Jong police station. There, Sunbae begins drawing conclusions about the Sunlight apartment case and the number serial killer. The chief asks how many times he has played this pointless cat and mouse game. Another person adds that in Baek Min-don's case, there was a chance the girl had teamed up with the number criminal. He remembers how the woman lied during questioning, claiming she had never seen the girl with that man. He smiles and says the man is not lying. Even without proof that Mojidian had joined hands with him, he understands the reason. There were no fingerprints or DNA traces found either. Security cameras also failed to identify anyone clearly. The detective even erased the image files from the building surveillance cameras. Not even the victim from Yoon-seon's family mentioned Ji Hyun being there, even though he had said she would be fine if she told the police everything. She would not face any trouble, though he keeps searching for the girl after the Baek Min-dong case. He decides to deal with this arrest first and investigate number separately afterward. His partner in the car as they leave the station, she asks whether this is really the right thing to do. Sunbae sees nothing wrong with it, since he met the woman himself and received useful answers. After all, hiding the girl gives them some insurance, especially because number can see what is coming. He thinks following the trail will be difficult because of the boy. They still have not had a proper conversation, and he believes they cannot let the police catch him first. They need to settle a few issues first before tracking them down. Meanwhile, the girl enters the hospital room to visit her father. The younger girl asks what the detective said and whether it really was number. She adds that he also admitted he does not know how they nearly lost their lives. Something still weighs heavily on the little girl's heart because that that pursuer had no clear reason to do it. The older girl did not know who he was, while the younger one wants to know why he mentioned begging for mercy. They tell their father the whole family almost disappeared, and no one understands why the man acted that way. Yoon-seon tells the younger girl that everything is over now. From this point on, he says things will be alright. He says they do not need to know anymore. Their father did nothing wrong, and they are alive. They begin crying and hugging one another, grateful that they survived everything safely. He tells them they should never dwell on those frightening memories again. The pursuer became one of the many targets number dealt with, and his final words were recorded. And an unhappy memory appears, showing the number's criminal in a room filled with wounded people. He is there with a scar near his eye. His school friends are also injured around him. He screams at the woman responsible for all of it. He had taken the lives of all his friends. Woman says she did it because he would never have been able to do it himself. She tells him that if he hates it, he should end her, because Number is her master. After saying that, she claims yet another life, and with that the memory fades away. Number wakes inside his car with a headache, recalling that painful day. The girl is sleeping in the back seat. He wonders why such an old memory came back to him now. Although he has left many things unresolved, he still chooses to continue his missions. As the girl wakes up, he keeps driving his black van. He parks in another alley and prepares to leave. He is going to complete his tasks. He speaks with a woman covered in tattoos. She recognizes him from some time ago. She says it has been a long while since he visited, especially after he became famous. He hands her the audio recorders, since she had asked for them. The tattooed woman gives him the contact information he requested. She asks whether she should deduct the cost for all of this. The girl then remembers that these are the recorders he always carried with him. The woman also recognizes the girl and says she has nothing to do with her father. She finds it interesting, since the girl is the only person Number has spared so far. He tells Ji Hyun to ignore everything the woman says and leave. After that, they get back on the road. She then asks what those recorders are, even though he tells her it is none of her business. Ji Hyun knows they contain the final words of the people he removes. She asks who he is delivering those recordings to, and why. He says the recordings are messages left behind by those who are no longer here, for those who still wish to speak one final time. In the end, he once again leaves behind their last words for the people they loved. Some others use that moment to tell their lawyers how to divide their legacy and inheritance. Then there are those who spend their final breath cursing the people who failed to end them. She asks why he keeps these memos, and he explains that sometimes they are the only proof left behind. The information gathered from the eliminated person is then connected to whoever the message is meant for. He also takes the useful parts of the will and sends them to an agent who can deliver the recording without leaving a trace. The girl thinks it is dangerous, since these are recordings taken from a crime scene. However, the man says anything that could alert the police has already been removed. Still, the girl cannot understand why he goes this far. After all, his goal is supposed to be removing potential criminals of the future. Yet afterward, he still delivers their final words to someone else. She asks why, since the same thing happened before. They nearly got caught by the police just to pass on the final words of a bad person. From her perspective, he is doing nothing but putting himself in danger. Even though she cannot understand it, he decides to show her something. He places blue flowers on a grave. She asks who the flowers are for. He answers that he does not know. After all, that man's last wish was only to place flowers on his sister's grave. He once had a reason, but it hardly matters now. He simply chose to fulfill the final wishes of the people he eliminates. It does not matter who they are, as long as the wish is something within his power to grant. Mojidaeon asks whether that even includes ruthless criminals, for the criminal marked by numbers, with the scar on his face, right or wrong, good or evil, makes no difference. As long as they are future criminals he is sending to their end, he honors their final wishes. That is the rule he chose and has followed ever since. Even though the girl finds the whole thing absurd, she had always thought he was taking lives only to protect innocent people. But now she cannot tell whether this man actually cares about the kind of person he is about to erase. He seems almost like a machine, moving only according to the rules he programmed into himself. She wonders if something in his past made him this way, but she cannot help. She can only question what keeps such a cold man moving. Last, he reaches his destination. He gets out of the car and stops along a crowded street. It feels like an underground world, an extremely strange place. Our anti-hero says this is the final wish written on the list of someone he eliminated. He explains that he came to carry out a revenge the man could not complete. In the photograph, that man had the number 34 above his head. The target is a tattooed man inside a nightclub, watching everyone around him. A man once stood before the masked figure, desperately begging him to take care of someone. Our anti-hero asked who he was supposed to eliminate. We then see the tattooed man at another man's house. He tells the man in a suit that he should have lived a better life. The suited man kept crying and begging Batman to do it. That was when he handed over the recordings he had received. In exchange, he gave him the tattooed man's photo and information. This tattooed man is about to cause trouble, just like the 34 people before. That is why he came to this nightclub to find him, because it was the final wish of one of the people on the list. Inside the nightclub, the tattooed man asks a butler to bring another bottle of liquor. While speaking with someone, he says he has already rested plenty of times this week. He says he will charge $7,000 for each person, and there are 3 targets. He was threatened with losing his family if he refused the terms, and now that threat is about to become real. The tattooed man says he does not enjoy doing this to ordinary civilians. Another man asks whether what he feels is guilt. The tattooed man says it is just a nuisance, and things will not settle down for a while. Another issue is that he must handle it personally and cannot make it look like an accident. He ends by saying he will do it within 6 days. Outside the nightclub, our antiheroes watch him walk past. On the phone, he asks where the 3 people he needs to send someone after are located. Ji-hyun-daeun asks if he is the target, and the masked man confirms it. Our protagonist remembers the photo showing 34, but now the number has fallen to 33. He explains that he can only see the numbers in photos as they were at the moment the picture was taken, and those numbers may change afterward. If the tattooed man's number had been 1 or 0, he would not have carried out that man's final request. Strangely, he seems to sense that the girl is watching him. Ji-hyun quickly ducks down, frightened that he might notice her. She had narrowly avoided being seen by that Yakuza-faced man. He says that now they have confirmed his number, they can head down from there. The girl then asks whether taking that man's life was someone else's last wish. She wonders if he had sought revenge and whether the number had sealed his fate because of it. Would it not have been better to let him go so he could carry out that revenge on his own? If he had taken revenge himself, 33 people would have been removed from the list of those destined to die. However, they could not know whether he truly would have targeted this man for revenge or gone after someone else instead. Since they were not certain, she believes they should have confirmed the truth before ending another life. Like before, the numbers could help them learn who would act and how the crimes would happen. But at that point, the masked man thinks that reasoning no longer makes sense. Leaving one target alive makes him remember moments from his past. He recalls how his childhood friends were taken by a woman who could also see numbers, and how someone planning to harm another might still be bad either way. But the woman said it was different, because the people she acted against were destined to become criminals. Back then, the boy asked how she could be so sure when she could not even see the numbers. No matter how many people they might hurt, or whether they would really act, they were still human beings, and that was all those children understood. Even so, he kept asking how she could be certain she was right to take those lives. He asks Ji-hyun whether she can tell which numbered people should be left to their fate and which should be saved. He wants to know if she can truly decide which lives matter and which ones have no value. Can she judge who deserves mercy, who is good, and who is bad just by looking at their numbers? Saying such things cannot truly be defined, he tells the girl that she understands nothing, but with an innocent expression. She asks whether it is really that hard to tell. She believes it is obvious that a hitman would never bring anything good into the world. When she was young, adults often smoked on the neighborhood streets around her. She did not know what they were smoking or how harmful it was, but the smell had always bothered her. To her, separating bad people in this way does not seem like it should be so complicated. However, the math-obsessed serial killer thinks she still has not grasped the real issue. He chooses to stay calm, deciding she is only an uninformed child, and that he does not need to work hard to justify his motives. In any case, all he wants from her is a simple yes or no. When she says choosing between one man's life and the 33 people he might harm is obvious, he asks if she would sacrifice him to save them. Without hesitating, Ji-hyun answers that she would, and the mysterious emo-looking man finds that response acceptable. He needs her to handle something for him that she cannot do yet. That is why he plans to teach her how to awaken her eye ability to a higher level. He locates the club where the man got the job and, through surveillance, where he is staying. His subordinates usually keep quiet, but that is clearly the office where they operate. He asks the girl how much time the man has left. Using her eye technique, she sees the numbers 14 and 9. She wonders if it means 14 hours and 9 minutes, 14 minutes and 9 seconds, or perhaps 14 months and 9 days, leaving other possibilities too. Our protagonist thinks it is most likely 14 years and 9 months. Especially since the man accepts a job every 2 weeks. Even if he sends a subordinate to work for him, 14 days would still be enough time to deal with 33 people. While he watches for an opening to remove him, he needs her to monitor the subordinates and capture photos and videos of their faces. He also tells her to carefully check the number above each of those henchmen. The girl is somewhat startled by the idea of dealing with a group of grown men. He admits he already warned her this was beyond her current limits, which is why he will teach her how to use her eyes. In the best possible future, future. He will teach her to use those numbers flawlessly, while they still have time to do so. He takes out 2 guns. One of them is empty, while the other is loaded. He tells the girl to choose between them through a dangerous test aimed at herself. Then he asks whether she wants the gun on the right or the left. Moji, terrified, asks if he is joking, unable to believe he would actually suggest this. He simply says that if she chooses the empty one, nothing will happen. But if she chooses the loaded one, her remaining lifespan will drop to 0. He explains that this is the point. By watching the numbers appear, they can measure how much time she has left. That way, she should be able to tell which gun is loaded and which one is not. He says it is the same as reading people. Observe the remaining lifespan, understand the logic, and use a little more thought. Then she recalls seeing the numbers of her own remaining lifespan on the day she nearly crossed over. Now tells her to concentrate on the numbers above her own head. He instructs her to slowly close her eyes and focus on the numbers floating over her. She can make out a 9 and a 4. But fear overtakes her, and the numbers disappear. She says they look as if they are floating inside glass, though he ignores how strange that sounds. Number tells her to choose between the weapon on the right and the one on the left. The girl picks the one on the left. He then aims it at her head. As she sees the numbers ticking down by the second, she begs him to stop. He cries out that the numbers are falling. When he checks it afterward, the weapon really is loaded. Ji-hyun asks whether he is trying to shoot her or test her ability, and he replies that every action carries risk. Still, as long as she can see the numbers, finding the truth becomes much easier. He now tells her to use this method with every choice she makes from this point forward. By doing that, she can avoid traps and dangers she would never have noticed before. She will be able to choose the safest route and move without unnecessary risk. Even a weak little girl like her could easily photograph their faces without being noticed. She has not agreed yet, and like before, she will search for a way to protect innocent lives. Still, she fears making a mistake, putting herself in danger, and becoming nothing but a burden he will regret bringing along. He does not believe that and asks why she is worrying so much. Even if she makes a mistake, his numbers will not change, and nothing will stop him from removing his targets as planned. So he tells her not to worry, since his plans are not so weak that a little girl could ruin them. After that, they return to the extremely crowded street. There, the scarred man covered in tattoos appears again, and behind him stands the obvious Dark Knight, the man known as Number. Number's usual method is to predict what comes next, and Ji-hyun can also make use of her ability. He must prevent any number from dropping, because if one changes, it means he failed to deal with a planned target, and if he fails to remove that person, he also fails to protect innocent people. Those are civilian lives he could have saved, and after everything he has seen, Number knows he cannot compromise his beliefs, cannot allow even the smallest chance of those numbers decreasing, because a single drop can inevitably mark the arrival of a deadline. At that very moment, after a cat knocks over a can, the tattooed man notices him and crashes into him. The two immediately clash in a fierce knife fight. After Number avoids several attacks, the tattooed man admits he is better than expected. He then asks who he is and who sent him this time. The comic book hero fan removes his mask to speak, and this encounter becomes the second time the anti-hero faces a deadline. Suddenly, the tattooed man and his thugs storm into the place, frightening everyone inside. He orders his men to force everyone out roughly. He also tells them to drag the manager out. So, while they rough people up, the men search for the manager, the white-haired one. His followers begin looking with him for the manager who must be hiding somewhere. They intimidate several men until they finally find someone with white hair. The battered man asks who they are and why they are doing this. Yakuza-like man checks his mouth in a cruel way, using a knife instead of proper tools. On the floor, the manager begs him to spare him and not end his life there. The tattooed man finds this amusing and asks whether he is begging him or begging the knife. The man starts crying, but there is no time left. Soon after, he is reduced to a grisly mess. With a serious expression, the tattooed Yakuza says the job was done well and asks who those people were, though for the man in the suit, it was merely another job he did not care about. Meanwhile, the little girl succeeds in taking pictures of 7 of his henchmen. She collects photos of these dangerous people as if she were hunting Pokemon. She assumes they are the ones who have not left the office yet, but they will have to go home eventually. Several days have passed since she began moving on her own, yet she still has not had a chance to use her new ability. Although she tried following the ideal path, the numbers above her still have not changed. Still, she understands his point that taking risks can sometimes matter, because it makes changes in the numbers easier to detect. Meanwhile, the serial killer and the Yakuza remain locked in a violent exchange. They launch a relentless exchange of attacks. Still, neither one can land a clear finishing hit, because both of them are incredibly skilled. The tattooed man is certain he is fighting a true professional. Of course, that professional is basically Batman. He understands that his opponent must have trained in sports, combat, and even mental games such as chess or gambling. Anything built around systems of victory and defeat is something he must understand. He knows exactly when to strike and when to defend. He even understands which weak points are worth targeting. He looks around, wondering if anything nearby could give him an edge, whether for striking, cutting, dodging, or blocking against his opponent. Even so, something about the fight feels wrong to him. From the very start, it should have been nearly impossible for him to gain the upper hand. No matter how fast he responds, he always seems destined to trail one move behind his opponent. Yet he still wonders why the distance between their attacks feels like it is gradually narrowing. Now it feels as though his opponent is the one moving ahead of him. After all, Batman always comes prepared. Instead of dodging after the tattooed man attacks, he predicts the movement and avoids it before the strike even comes. Still, he starts thinking that this whole situation is insane. What he does not know is that the antihero has activated his Sharingan-like eye. What the number does is simple. If his number rises, he is moving correctly, but if it reaches 0, he knows he has made a mistake. The difference is that he applies this method to every single action, almost like a machine. While they normally need their eyes to observe other people's numbers, they usually do not have to look at their own, because those numbers appear directly in their minds. Every choice they make leads toward a certain future, and the numbers reflect where that future is heading. The emo superhero's brain processes all these factors in just a few seconds. That is how the ideal path forms when a number cannot be changed. At that moment, he finally lands a solid hit on the tattooed man and manages to injure him, and he follows it with a heavy kick straight to the man's chest. This goes beyond what an ordinary person could understand, but the number has built a system that proves itself the moment he brings the man down. He knows the man's name is Choi Chang-hak, number 33. Once this man is dealt with, 33 innocent lives can be saved. That is when this genius, practically Albert Einstein, realizes he is facing the number criminal. He starts laughing as everything clicks in his mind, including the way his opponent predicted the future, and says he is just like that albino person. That immediately drags our protagonist back into painful memories, shaped by all his trauma. His expression goes completely blank as the trauma is triggered. Meanwhile, the girl begins running from the tattooed man's henchmen. She even ends up trapped by them. They offer her a potato chip, saying it will be Ji-hyun's final meal. Our protagonist, caught in those painful memories, grabs the man by the collar and demands that he repeat what he said about the albino girl who could see numbers just like him. Then the Yakuza man starts remembering a brutally chaotic day. It was the day that albino girl overwhelmed a whole group of people. Looking at her, the tattooed man says he lost his job because of her. She had arrived first and dealt with the targets before him. He asked who she was and whether she had come for a job too. She said those men hurt children on the street, used violence, and she first thought he belonged with them before strangely asking if he was one of the good people. So he explains to our anti-hero that their shared target incident happened in China. However, that was years ago, and he still does not know exactly who the girl was. While the number is shaken by this revelation, the man strikes him with a brick, using a truly dirty move. Even if he knew where the woman was, he would not say it. Then he pushes him away, and our protagonist instantly becomes alert. He notices the number above the man beginning to change. He knows he has overused his eyes too much in a short time by relying on them repeatedly. He sees the man preparing his escape. He also thinks about how this man met the albino woman who once traumatized him in China. Since the man escaped, he knows he must be heading either to his home or his office. In the getaway car with his henchmen, he starts applying bandages. They ask their boss if he is all right and who did this to him. The moment he says it was the number criminal, everyone is stunned. At that moment, he calls Junbyo. The suited man he had spoken with earlier tells him over the phone that they caught a rat who had been sneaking around and watching them since the other day. At first, he feels confused, wondering if she is merely an ordinary young girl. Then he remembers she is the daughter of the psychopath Hyun Chul, the girl who vanished together with Number. To the boss, that explanation makes perfect sense. He begins laughing, clearly amused by how interesting things have become. He then says Number is pursuing him right now and orders his men to take their usual positions and get ready. Number chases after him with no intention of letting him escape. After all, it has been years since he last found a clue about the albino woman. The tattooed man says they should give Number, the serial killer, a proper welcome. After driving for a long time, Number reaches their base without making a sound. The moment he steps into a room, he sees the girl being held by Junbyeom, while the boss sits calmly in a chair. Seeing that Number managed to find them, the boss welcomes him. He assumes the girl must be very important to him. After all, she is the only survivor he spared and chose to bring along. He suggests a duel where the winner takes the girl, while Number may leave alive without her. Of course, if he refuses the offer, the girl will not survive. To everyone's surprise, Number refuses and tells the man to do whatever he wants, claiming he does not care what happens to the girl, and is actually being helped. Hearing those words leaves the girl deeply hurt, and the others are left confused. At that moment, several of the boss's henchmen appear. The Yakuza man says that once fear takes over, a person is finished, and he knows exactly what must be done. He states that the only way to survive his henchmen is to attack them first, but the men say that no matter how strong he has only 2 arms against many opponents. If each lands a hit, they can strike him at least 15 times. That is the agreement the henchmen have made with their boss. Our protagonist tells him to use this time to refresh his memory, since he has many questions to ask. He says that once the boss remembers everything, and he has dealt with all the henchmen, the man will have to answer him. Meanwhile, the tattooed man orders them to end the child's life. However, Jihyun activates her ocular ability. She remembers him speaking about taking necessary risks. She also remembers him refusing the boss's proposal, saying that they would actually be doing him a favor. All of that pushes the girl to want to survive. She recalls when he said he would help her understand the numbers and choose the path that would extend her life, making her wonder what decision she should make now. Meanwhile, the tattooed Yakuza man again orders them to take Jihyun's life. Jihyun freezes in fear when our protagonist points a gun at her. Looks as though he is about to fire. Her ocular ability activates once more. She wonders whether she has made the right choice. Since the number is large, she accepts the shot. She falls backward but remains alive. He then begins firing more shots. The Yakuza man wonders whether Number had been bluffing when he picked up the gun. After that, one of the henchmen hits his hand. The blow forces him to drop the firearm, but because our protagonist is prepared, he grabs a sharp weapon and turns it against the boss's henchman. Meanwhile, another henchman snatches up our protagonist's weapon and gets ready to fire. He even shoots at Number, but it does not seem to have much effect. Number only feels the impact. Meanwhile, he orders the man to shoot again. Just then, the girl, still tied up, begins running away. At the same time, the protagonist attacks fiercely and brings down several henchmen. He notices the girl making her escape, and the boss orders Jin to chase after her. As our protagonist scans the henchmen, he notices that 15 of them still remain. He remarks that his Kevlar vest protects him from neck to thigh, covering his vital areas. 2 people, whether they carry a number or not, are people he cannot eliminate. Just as that thought crosses his mind, the boss moves in to attack him. Our antihero manages to block the attack and then attempts to strike back at him. He fails, and several henchmen quickly arrive to protect their boss. At that moment, the number rises to 16. He realizes this gang is troublesome. They will not back down or collapse from a few simple injuries. Each one rushes at Number with full force, leaving him with almost no room to move, while they form something like a wall around him. The boss attacks, trying to catch him unprepared. Once again, the overused eye begins sending pain through him. Then one of the henchmen lands a bat strike against his head. It makes him remember the albino girl telling him to give up because he was far too weak. In that instant, he disarms one of the men and removes him from the fight for good. Counting aloud, he says that was the 4th. Then he asks whether the man has any final words or last wish. When the man stays silent, he takes down another one while Moji runs away with every bit of strength she has. Looking through one of the doors, she sees that her lifetimer stays unchanged, though she realizes she has to choose the middle path. The moment she steps inside, the girl notices something strange on the wall, and the man chasing her loses track of where she went. Everything in the room seems to shorten her remaining time a little, making her fear she has chosen a path with no way back. But 2 huge metallic doors keep her lifetimer from dropping too low. Still, no matter what she tries, her remaining time never goes beyond 3 minutes. Cornered and confused, she wonders what she can do. Meanwhile, the girl remembers the man saying her number changed to 1 before she was nearly gone. Somehow, she had still managed to alter it and make the number fall. She also recalls the moment he lost control because her very existence meant something completely different to him. After those memories return to her, the henchman Jin enters the room where she is hiding. The man in glasses tells her she should understand that he cannot let her walk away after this. After all, this is what happens when a child like her gets involved with a dangerous man like him. He also points out that she is the daughter of another serial killer. That moment, the girl pulls the fire extinguisher hose from the wall. She sprays water into the henchman's face to stop him from chasing her. She says none of this would have happened in her life, if not for people like him. The man suddenly notices an open fuse box behind him. He realizes she is trying to use the fuse box to shock him. A large puddle spreads across the floor. Then the fuse box short circuits. The electrical failure makes every light in the room go out. The man is relieved to have survived, knowing that shock could have been fatal. He realizes that, for the first time, the girl's choice was not guided only by numbers. Every action she took had been carefully thought through. Then the protagonist understands that she might actually succeed. The henchmen and the boss panic when the lights suddenly vanish. He orders everyone to turn on the flashlights on their phones. But before they can react, the killer uses the darkness to his advantage. He begins moving through the area, taking the henchmen down one after another. He even finally deals with the boss, and that choice allows the numbers to shift exactly as he needs. It feels as if there is no firm, proven logic, yet each explanation answers one of the questions troubling her. The man had said the numbers never changed unless someone was about to be eliminated, so she wonders why the numbers keep shifting again and again. They change moment by moment, almost alive, even though they are supposed to stay fixed, simply because she thinks about her next move. She remembers the serial killer saying she changed the number before being eliminated. Though strange, the answer is simple. That is all she must do to survive, and there is no need for her to overthink it. However, if it is true that she can alter numbers that were never supposed to change, the proof appears when our protagonist starts taking down several henchmen. At the very moment the lights go out, he uses his eyes to locate them precisely and strike. So this means he can also predict the future through the numbers and use that ability to interfere with fate. Once again, we see the protagonist taking them down in the darkness. Since this choice lets the number move exactly as he wants, all she could do was find a way to buy herself more time. By doing that, she could stretch her remaining life long enough to shape the future as needed, and the number could deal with his enemies however he chose. Meanwhile, the number cuts through the crime boss's henchmen. He brings them down one after another using his special vision. That power allows him to carry everything out even in complete darkness. When the crime boss hears all his henchmen being taken down, he already senses that he is next. Then he knocks him down, saying they should go back to the start and try again. He begins recording a tape stating the man's name, Choi Chang-ha, along with the victim count of 33. Holding him by his wounded neck, he says eliminating him will fulfill someone else's wish. Still, he will give him the same right to one final wish he can grant. He tells him he may make a wish, as long as it is something within his power. He says this is the man's last chance to reveal everything he knows about the albino girl who can also see numbers. The girl overhears their conversation. Then the boss asks what would happen if his wish were to stay alive. Our protagonist says that cannot happen, because if he survives, he will eventually take the lives of 33 innocent people. That is why he has to stop the man for good, so ordinary people can keep living their lives in peace. The man bursts into laughter, treating it like a joke, because he has never met anyone so foolish in his life. He tells the protagonist that his logic makes no sense, since his men will not stop just because orders from him suddenly cease. When one blade is damaged, they simply bring out another. Protagonist admits he cannot break every blade, yet he refuses to stand aside while innocent people are harmed. Filled with hatred, he asks when the incident in China took place and how the man learned that the woman could see numbers. The boss replies that she is currently in Korea. He uses the protagonist's outrage as an opening and tries to finish him off, but the protagonist has already sensed the movement, and the knife is knocked away before it can reach him. Before his final moment, the man warns that a war will break out among the mad people who can see numbers. He adds that if the protagonist struggled this much against him, he doubts he will survive a true battle with those people. Soon after, the boss goes silent, leaving a tense and oppressive mood hanging in the air. Seeing the girl behind him, the protagonist says it is time for them to leave. Moji asks what they should do with the man in glasses, and the protagonist says his number is 0, so they cannot remove him. Then the girl asks whether he is truly fine with everything that happened. She also says she followed the numbers exactly as he had taught her. She had even found out something new, but before she could explain it, something unexpected occurred. The protagonist suddenly collapses down the stairs. His brain had finally reached its absolute limit. In response, his consciousness begins sinking deep into the hidden corners of his mind. He falls further and further into the buried memories surrounding his mysterious origin. He recalls a day in the classroom when the albino girl first appeared. The children were excited by the arrival of a new classmate. The albino girl asked him what his real name was, but the protagonist said he did not have one yet. It all began 19 years before the number incident ruined his life, and he wondered when his earliest memory truly started. He remembers opening his eyes long ago and struggling to understand where he was. No matter how hard he tries, he has already forgotten everything that came before that day. An older woman found him collapsing on the street, close to freezing, and helped him. She asked whether he wanted to come with her and offered him help with genuine kindness. He wonders whether he took her hand that day or not. Somehow, he later discovered a book hidden beneath the table. It was a comic book about a mysterious hero. He began reading it right away. Several scenes seemed to reflect the life he would one day live. Just then, the albino girl appeared and asked if he was enjoying the book. She said she had found a secret place where all of those books were hidden. Still, he could not tell the teacher, because she had gotten into serious trouble the last time they discovered it. The protagonist promised that he would not tell anyone. After that, she asked him how old he was. Yet he could not clearly remember his age at the time, so he told her he was around 5 or 6, and she also did not know his name. The woman at the school told him this was common for boys his age who had experienced trauma. Eventually, the teachers would give him a name, just as they did for the other students. The girl said she had felt like an odd one ever since she began using the name given to her at the orphanage. In any case, he would probably be placed in class 1, located on the 1st floor. She was on the 2nd floor, and he could call her Nuna. When the boy asked for her name, She answered. She said her name was Soa. He asked if he could visit her again to read her comics, and Soa agreed, as long as he stopped speaking to her so formally. Beneath the spreading vines and dense bushes, mountain trail led toward a place wrapped in deep quiet. There, a small school gave shelter to 27 students and 4 teachers. The children were separated between the first and second floors. The school and dormitory looked like something from a fairy tale, completely closed off as though they belonged to another world. That was the place where he spent his childhood. Back then the boys began calling him Dom. 16 years before the number incident, this friend invited him to join everyone for lunch while he sat alone with his comic book, showing time had moved between memories. The protagonist was reading an English dictionary he had borrowed from the library. He said it contained the same letters as a book he wanted to understand, so he started teaching himself English. The boy said he was clever, especially since he could not read anything when he first arrived. At that moment, a bully ran into him. Impact sent his book falling to the floor. They insisted that he apologize to him. The bully stayed completely silent. The protagonist's friend wanted an apology because the bully had shoved into the boy while forcing his way into the line. The bully refused to apologize, but the protagonist said it was all right. Then he looked toward a girl and told her to give him his soup. The girl replied that she could only serve the food according to who arrived first. Since he had skipped ahead in line, she said she could not serve him that way. The teacher had already warned them that anyone who cut in line would lose the chance to eat. The protagonist's friend thanked the girl for standing her ground. Afterward, following his friend's advice, he ate plenty because physical education was coming up. They also reminded him to be careful and avoid getting hurt later. Sometimes his memories grew hazy. At times the school looked rather rundown. At other moments, everything appeared ordinary. He also practiced weapon training with his friends, so they could become stronger. The local teachers had thoroughly filled their minds with those beliefs. Everyone spent long hours doing intense exercise. The teacher pushed them to give everything they had. During that time, the protagonist gradually began to build strength. Naturally, it was all training meant to prepare them to become ninjas someday. They trained relentlessly and clashed hard with one another. They even practiced with knives and were warned not to leave the school. The children fought with serious intensity, restraining each other and going far beyond normal play. They were told outsiders were childish and foolish, unable to understand the children's mission. The teachers warned them never to be tempted by the outside world or its ignorant people. The first-class teacher understood how hard and painful their lives had been before they came to the school. Each child had carried a slightly different kind of pain. Still, the suffering they endured was never their own fault. War, poverty, and the rule of survival had left the world in ruins. Driven blind by greed, people failed to see that they were walking straight toward destruction. That was exactly why the Great Mother Charlotte had founded this orphanage. As they practiced shooting, they also listened to teachings about this goddess-like mother. The goddess mother said that even if they gave up on themselves, she would accept every lost soul and guide them toward the future. Any evildoers or heretics who tried to stop her would be handled by her apostles and disciples. Students with bright eyes and unusual traits were said to be disciples with extraordinary potential, chosen to stand with the goddess mother and change the world by opposing villains. Maybe those people could still become children like them, with kind hearts. For that to happen, they had to listen carefully to the teachers and study with dedication. After all those strange teachings, lunchtime finally came. Then the atmosphere of the school shifted, and it suddenly felt like an ordinary place. She asked the class representatives to lead the greeting. After the intense training, one of the protagonist's friends wrapped a bandage around his own hand. He said it was the kind of training injury that simply could not be avoided. Once the afternoon training ended, he always had 1 hour to rest. Lights went out at 10:30, and he remembered that a teacher stayed awake through the night to watch over them. Every window and door was locked, so they would have no way to leave. With security cameras placed throughout the building, escaping or sneaking around the orphanage at night was almost impossible. Of course, none of the children ever tried to step outside after dark. At night, they whispered among themselves, wondering whether the teacher's words were actually true. He was unsure, though the teachers claimed that the more they questioned and learned, the more their eyes would open to the truth. And the key felt strange, because it was not like the ones he had seen in the comics and magazines he read. His friends said he had been acting oddly because of the girl on the second floor, although the protagonist denied it, and he continued reading his comics without stopping. They told the story of a masked hero who went up against a pig-like crime boss. The idea of heroes and villains remained fixed in the boy's mind as he read those magazines. He recalled the teacher's words about those who would defeat villains and help the mother goddess transform the world. At that moment, the white-haired girl pulled the books from his hands. The protagonist asked Nuna what she was doing. Just then, the owner of the school appeared and said she had forgotten her suitcase. That was when he realized why his friend had hidden the books and acted as if they were studying. The woman only reminded them not to skip dinner for the sake of studying, though she was pleased to see them there. The girl was irritated with him because he had nearly been caught again after getting too absorbed absorbed in his books. Another year passed in the orphanage, and he turned 15 before the number incident. Once again, his friend scolded him for being careless and nearly getting caught. And that would only make it even more difficult for them to step outside. After all, secretly taking those items without being discovered was already extremely difficult for her. He asked whether she could bring him with her the next time she went outside. Nuna had no problem letting him tag along. She only wanted to know why he had suddenly changed his mind. Our protagonist wanted to find out what else was in that place, beyond the comics and the countless stacks of books. He no longer wanted to rely only on what the teacher said. He wanted to see the outside world with his own eyes. His friend heard him say he wanted to see the world for himself. She even thought about leaving that very day. After doing a few quick calculations, she said they could go out later that night. Seeing his reaction, she asked why he was hesitating now when he had been the one to suggest it. Nuna said the conditions that day were perfect, and if they missed it, they would have to wait another 9 days. Once she asked whether he truly wanted to go, the boy immediately began waiting for nightfall. He stuffed clothes and a basketball beneath his blanket to make it look as if he were asleep. Then, at exactly 2 in the morning, he woke up to put the plan into action. She would head down to the first floor, while he was supposed to leave the dormitory door unlocked. But if he handled it too clumsily, the teacher on night duty might catch him. He had always wondered how she came and went unnoticed when every door and window was locked. That night, he watched her descend the stairs from the second floor to the first. He warned the girl that the teacher was standing dangerously close to them. She told him to wait a little, then slip past quietly. Yet the albino girl simply walked past the bespectacled teacher without the slightest concern. He realized the teacher had been drugged, and that something had been mixed into her tea. Because of that, the two of them managed to leave together in the middle of the night without trouble. Remembering that moment from the past, the boy was stunned to see his teacher in such a state. Meanwhile, Nuna hurried him along and urged him to get outside quickly. But every window was locked, and the doors were sealed as well. The teachers usually locked both the corridor doors and the bathroom windows. However, there was one door they had locked, and then forgotten about the one leading to the storage room. She had secretly replaced its lock with one she could open whenever she wanted. The boy wondered how she had managed to switch the locks in the first place, but even she could not clearly remember how it happened. She had simply found it and thought it might come in handy someday. When the teachers were away, she sometimes took things from their office and found useful items there. There was also a basement room that looked like a laboratory, and that was where she found the drug used in the teacher's tea. She had tested it by mixing tiny amounts into the teacher's coffee, and the social studies teacher proved the least careful. So the plan had to happen while that teacher was on night duty, during the full moon that only fell on Monday and Tuesday. If they missed that timing, they would need to wait quite a while before trying again. As she explained all this, the boy grew uneasy and told Nuna to wait, asking whether it was really okay since the teacher might be harmed. The girl said she had tested it several times and the teacher would be fine. Most likely, she would not even remember anything the next day. Then she warned him to be careful when jumping, because the drop was higher than it appeared. When they reached a certain point, they stopped because of the security cameras. The cameras rotated to cover the area, so they had to move only when none of them were pointing in their direction. He asked whether it was time, since the cameras seemed to be facing the other way, but the girl told him to wait a little longer. She then explained the sequence of the cameras, which areas they covered, and how many seconds they stayed on each spot. It was a dull, overly technical explanation that did not really matter. She said the next blind spot would come after several more seconds, once the cameras stopped facing their way. She told him they needed to wait roughly 3 minutes for that moment to arrive. Our protagonist asked how many times she had gone back and forth to learn the entire camera pattern. She replied that it had been around 600 times, but the main point was that she had not actually calculated it. Somehow, she could simply see it. She said she had wandered around the school since childhood, and guessed all that security had been put in place because of her. Still, no matter what they tried, they could not suppress her desire to explore. They could block her path, but she would always find another way through and keep exploring. Only when they added night guards did things become harder. She noticed that the boy still could not stop thinking about the teacher they had left behind, and our protagonist admitted that the fondness in her expression had frightened him. They continued on and learned that everyone there had been blessed by the mother goddess in the same way. Except during training, no one in the orphanage could harm another. They were taught that outsiders were dangerous, so they must never leave and must always obey the teachers. Then she hugged her friend and said that, just as had warned, doing this might truly be dangerous. She added that if the drug was so risky, she wondered why the teachers had left it there at all, especially in a place where children were strictly forbidden to enter. She asked whether he also sensed that something about this place felt unusual. That was one of the reasons he decided he wanted to go with her and see what was outside. She wonders that if hurting people is wrong, then the hero in his comic must also be bad for fighting villains. However, However, the protagonist disagrees, believing the villain was the one who began doing wrong first. The girl then says the teachers did the same by trapping them there, so she is only doing whatever she can. If they are bad people, then doing bad things to them should be acceptable too. Afterward, she gets up, since they have only 20 seconds left to cross the area. Pointing toward a tree, she tells him he has to reach it within 10 seconds. She asks whether Dom knows that, besides classes 1 and 2, there is an honor class for people with certain talents. She says that next year she will graduate from class 2 and enter the honor class. If he has the same talent and meets the conditions, he can enter that room too. If that happens, she promises to explain everything about what she plans to do. She will also reveal every detail of the plans she is preparing, leaving nothing out. At that time, his numerical eye ability had already started to appear, and looking back, he believes it began on that day. He cannot remember it clearly. Maybe it happened a little later. He even thinks it may have started long after everything had gone wrong. He cannot say exactly when, but he knew he was unable to interfere very much. Although it seems obvious now, back then he believed it was merely his eyes playing tricks on him. As for the numbers and what they meant, he only began noticing them clearly about a year after the ability appeared. This brings the story to 14 years before the number incident currently taking place. Then the person in charge appears and says half a year has passed since they entered class 2. So a counseling session will be held with the science teacher after a long break. As she reads the students' names aloud, they head one by one to the counseling room. The first name called is number 1. Is the protagonist's friend Han Jol, who was admitted to that place 7 years earlier. He holds a high rank because he excels in training, shooting, and academics. The science teacher says that among his classmates, he has shown the strongest motivation. And Joel says he worked this hard because he wanted to become someone special. He has always wanted to join the honor class and graduate with one of the highest rankings. By doing so, he hopes to serve directly beside the mother goddess. He now realizes that without his teachers and friends, he would never have known how valuable and special he was. Otherwise, his father would have ignored and mistreated him until he slowly lost his purpose. Meanwhile, another girl is criticized for lacking motivation, since this is already her 5th year after admission. Compared with her peers, she ranks near the top in many areas, but deep inside when it comes to training. The teacher asks whether she is afraid to hurt others and punish evil in the name of the mother goddess. The girl replies that this is not the case. She simply prefers to study hard and become useful, while understanding that she is weaker than many of her peers. Then it is Kang Chang's turn, who has been admitted for 6 years. His academic ability is poor, but he makes up for it through training. The teacher asks whether he has any physical issues, such as burning eyes or constant headaches. Meanwhile, the science teacher removes the premonition symptoms from his eyes. At once, our protagonist says he often feels all those symptoms as well, and he is also in his 6th year since admission. He explains that these sensations began roughly 1 year earlier. His professor says that he should have brought it up much sooner. He also asks whether the boy has ever seen anything resembling numbers. At that very moment, the protagonist sees the number 11 floating above the man's head. He remembers what his friend said about students with special talents being sent to the honor class. She had said the requirements were extremely strict, and only a few people would be allowed in. The boy is not certain it is a number, but it looks like a wavering heat haze. The professor immediately begins filling out the boy's form. He notes that the boy is showing symptoms of premonition. Once the questions are finished, he realizes the boy is last in line, so he tells him to return to the classroom and bring several children for examination. He asks him to lead the other students to the science lab in the basement, adding that this year's harvest is promising. The boy then brings all the students who had gone before him to that lab. Even the top student in class has no idea there is an underground corridor, while the girl notices an unpleasant smell. When the bully asks about the way, the protagonist says the place is on the right. He sees the number 2 above the men's heads and the number 1 above the girl's head. A full year has passed since he first began seeing the numbers, though he still does not understand what they mean. By this point, he can control at will whether the numbers appear or disappear from his vision. He has deliberately kept it hidden because of the professor's unsettling reaction. He believed that simply saying he had seen something would be enough to get him into the honor class. But by the time he understood what was truly happening there, it was already too late. He saw his science professor standing beside a restrained man covered in what looked like tomato sauce. The professor told the students that people like this were always lurking around them. They were desperate to find anything useful they could steal for themselves. They had slipped through the forest to secretly record the orphanage. That was why the professor constantly warned them to stay alert whenever they left the building. He then asked the students who wanted to begin the game. Setting a gun on the table, the deranged professor announced that whoever fired first would enter the honor class immediately. He said that from such a short distance, there was no need to fear missing. He gripped the girl's shoulder and said that since she was so frightened, she should be the first one to act. He pushed the girl toward that reckless choice, reminding her that she had once claimed she would be brave enough. Like a typical mad scientist, he pressured her by asking if her wish to become stronger than the others had been a lie. He forced the girl to aim at the man in the suit. He urged her to go through with it. Then he aimed the weapon at the bold bully's head and told her she no longer had any reason to hesitate. He understood this was a process for her, believing that overcoming fear would make her spirit stronger. He forced her into that terrible act by threatening the life of one of her classmates. At that moment, the number 1 appeared above her head in the protagonist's vision. Tears began streaming down her face. However, she was not the one who pulled the trigger. Instead, another boy suddenly snatched the gun from her hand. He fired at the restrained man whose head was covered by a bag. That moment left a wound in the protagonist's heart that would last a lifetime. Afterward, the number above the boy's head dropped to 1. Then he let the gun fall to the floor. He asked whether the test was finished. He said that since one candidate had already passed, the test should now be over. But the science teacher only laughed and pulled open a curtain. He revealed that 3 more people they had caught spying on the orphanage were still waiting. Once again, he commented that the first person to act would gain the advantage. Whoever acted first and removed those people would be sent straight into the honor class. If 2 of the 3 were still left, he would repeat the same cruel game, ensuring the last student would not return to class without earning a place in the honor class. If they believed they could not do it, he said he would help them the same way he had before. While the students were being tormented, the albino girl waited behind the door with a firearm in her hands. The protagonist was made to hold a gun and practice by shooting at rats. Looking back, he realized it had never truly been a test. Their 4 promotions had already been decided, and this was simply their discipline. They were forced to endure harsh experiences and take part in eliminating others. All of it was meant to reshape their minds into something the adults could use. They were building a foundation by forcing the protagonist to shoot, knowing his friend would suffer if he refused. Meanwhile, the albino girl waited behind the door, ready to step in and begin her own little performance. Since she knew a new group was coming, she passed by as a precaution. Compared to the past, the teacher had not changed much for her, and though things had moved ahead of schedule, they believed everything would still work out, even if a few details were rearranged. So she entered the room with the gun in her hand. By counting the rhythm and weight of the footsteps, she knew it was the teacher. He wore something like a motorcycle helmet. He was the one who handled the night watch there, and he seemed able to sense her presence. He asked if she was only a student, then questioned which floor and class she belonged to. He realized she must be the one who had stolen the training pistol and replaced it with a fake. She began aiming at the man. She could not even catch him within his shadow. Then he switched off the lights. After that, he turned on the emergency lighting. He rushed past at an incredible speed. This made her fire in panic. The shot struck the glass hard. The science teacher then realized that someone was there. The bullets also tore through the man's helmet. He had used the helmet as a decoy, so he was not actually hit. He revealed his face and raised his firearm toward her. But just as he was about to fire, the science teacher opened the door to check what was happening, and the girl used the door as cover. At that moment, the man accidentally pulled the trigger. The projectiles turned out to be darts, and they nearly struck the teacher. He then asked why the teacher had no helmet on and what he was trying to do. He noticed a white strand from the albino girl's hair and said it was nothing important. Then he asked how the promotion ceremony for the new class was going. The science teacher replied that everything was going well, and they had just completed the approval process. Meanwhile, all the students were left exhausted and deeply shaken by what had happened. Our protagonist could no longer remember clearly how he made it back to the dormitory. Something between his sight and his thoughts made the whole scene feel covered by a pale white haze. For about a week after they returned, no one said a word about it. Then the numbers he had seen above their heads began vanishing one after another. Afterward, the teacher announced that the 4 new honor class students had arrived. They changed classrooms and were brought into their new room. 3 students were already waiting there, making 7 students in total who would now study together in the honor room. Among them was the albino girl, the friend of our future anti-hero. Climbed up to the roof in a dazed, lifeless state and found Nuna there, where the 2 of them met on the rooftop. She then handed him the newest volume of the comic book he loved. It was a gift to celebrate him joining her class. She said it had taken real effort to steal another issue for him, adding that 6 years had passed since they first met, and now they could finally see each other every day. The boy was still haunted by the visions that had led him there, and he suddenly began to feel sick. The boy even became slightly irritated with her. White-haired girl helped him calm down and regain himself. Then she asked whether he could see the numbers too, just as she could. After all, she realized he had a special ability, because she was able to see the same thing. Our protagonist was stunned to learn that his friend could also see the numbers like him. She told him she would explain everything once he entered the honor class. In her case, when she looked at someone, she saw how many people that person would save in the future, especially those whose lives were in danger. After that, she she told Dom that they could destroy the orphanage and remove the teachers so they could be free. If the two of them worked together, she believed they could easily do it and become heroes, just like the hero in the crow costume from the comics he always read. The boy was shocked when he realized the numbers she saw were connected to people she would save. Then she asked how many people the two of them could save in the future if they joined forces. After that, she asked what kind of numbers saw in his own visions. However, the protagonist grew upset, unable to understand what she meant by saving people like a hero. So he asked how she could be sure what her numbers meant. The girl did not answer and instead asked whether he still did not understand the meaning of his own numbers. He had not expected that, so she told him to think back carefully. She asked him to remember the first time the numbers changed, since she knew they had stayed the same for over a year. It had only begun to decrease one by one at that moment, the day before. Then the girl asked if anything came to mind, and he saw an enormous number floating above her head. He then asked whether Nuna was truly serious about taking down the teachers. The girl smiled and said yes, claiming it would be easier than he imagined. In the end, they wanted to raise children who would follow them willingly, rather than relying on force or direct physical control. At first, they acted like family, building trust and emotional bonds like kind teachers. Then, after making the children dependent on that sense of belonging, they pushed them into wrongdoing and broke down who they were inside. That way, the children would no longer act on their own. To her, none of those teachers were truly impressive. Once all the layers were stripped away, they were only ordinary people, the kind who would be helpless if caught off guard in their sleep. Our protagonist felt disturbed and repulsed as he listened to her frightening plan. Nuna said there was only one real problem. It was the teacher who always wore a motorcycle helmet. She did not think she could deal with that teacher alone, so she had tried to investigate the area. Because of that, she prepared a plan for November 17th of the following year, the only day the helmeted teacher would be away on vacation. First, they would have to deal with the remaining teachers and take control of the orphanage. Second, they would face the helmeted teacher when he came back the day after his vacation. Finally, they would find the founder of the orphanage, the mother goddess Charlotte, and strip away her position, facilities, and connections. The helmeted man and the mother goddess would not be easy opponents to face alone. However, the fact that he met her that day, while looking through comics, and the fact that both of them possessed special powers, felt like something arranged by fate. That was why she reached out to him, asking him to join her plan so they could defeat the villains and become heroes together, like a pure and beautiful romance story. The boy stayed seated on the floor, lost in thought for a long while. Then he asked whether that was the reason she had told him to enter the honor class. After all, at the promotion ceremony, she had wanted him to realize how terrible the teachers really were, and at the same time, she wanted him to cross a line, because then he might be able to stand with her against the teachers. She said that was not actually what she had meant. Still, by joining the honor class, he could learn more about the power in his eyes. The teachers wanted them to develop individuality, even if they did not expect much from the honor class students. But when a student with a special ability appeared, it was as if they had struck the lottery. Our protagonist asked whether his friend had also been forced to target someone during her ceremony. He could not stop thinking about what he had learned. All those methods meant to harm others and end lives. To him, it had only been knowledge needed to earn a higher rank and avoid being scolded by the teachers. The protagonist had thought those were simply things he had to know, never imagining he would use them for real. He believed the other students were the same, only pretending to rebel. He said he had acted that way too, never truly thinking in those terms. Nuna said that if they kept going like this, they would eventually become no better than the teachers. Our protagonist said he would escape soon. He told her he would not interfere with her plan, but he would use the opening to run away with his friends. Then he handed the comic book back to her. He said he could not become a superhero like the crow in the comic. After that, he walked away, unaware that one day he would become just like the man from that story. When he recalled that memory in the future, anger rose toward his younger self. Again and again, he told himself he had been wrong and should have escaped that situation. He thought he should have stopped the girl right there, because the number above her head was far too high and deeply suspicious. He should have realized those numbers represented the people she would harm in the future. He blamed himself, wondering why he never questioned her plan to destroy the orphanage, especially when she never mentioned sparing the children inside. He remembered her words about doing bad things to bad people, just like in the Crow comic book. Nuna insisted it would be simple, and she could not understand why did not see things the same way. Looking back on the past, the protagonist believed his younger self should have ended everything that day. 1 year after that day, the helmeted teacher left during his vacation. At last, the long-awaited date of November 17th arrived. The girl picked up the weapon, preparing to begin her plan. All of this took place 12 years before the number incident began, as it is now being shown. Then the story returned to the past, arriving at January 16th. Our protagonist used the tricks he had learned from Nuna when he was younger, secretly building an escape route and slowly filling in every gap on the mountain path map. After that difficult conversation, he and Nuna stopped talking. It was not anger or fight, but the strange uncertainty between them was too hard for him to handle. Then March 7th arrived, the day when his friends were released from their assigned duties for that month. Afterward, his two friends saw their numbers fall to 0 after committing a few more offenses. Only then did he finally understand what the numbers he always saw truly meant. He was shaken by the enormous number of people the albino girl was destined to endanger. He tried not to think about it, telling himself those were the students' lives, and that survival mattered most as the deadline drew closer. By July 28th, convincing his friends had proven difficult, and his female friend had grown even more detached than before. Meanwhile, the bald boy's aggressive behavior became stronger and far more noticeable. He could not explain it clearly, but everyone around him seemed damaged in some way. By October, with November quickly approaching, he still did not know whether Nuna's plan would actually succeed. As for him, he only wanted to get as many children out as possible, while wondering whether he could persuade the other two honor class friends. Meanwhile, in the classroom, the teacher was assessing Sol, the albino girl, and our protagonist. Teacher warned the red-haired student to be careful of the darkness in the hallway. She then began discussing Daum's plan, saying he was a strange boy who spoke in twisted ways and that his diary contained thoughts she doubted were genuine. The teacher said she understood the situation, told them not to worry, and promised she would speak with Daum. She also asked them to report anything similar among their classmates, saying he needed to guide the others onto his side. However, the albino girl managed to hear everything through the listening devices. She said it was a pity, since she had been the only one secretly reading that diary. Finally, November 16th, 2012 arrived. It was the moment the helmeted teacher began to leave, and she prepared to carry out her revenge. This happened 12 years before the serial number incident. During the chase, one of the teachers had already been injured. He ran after the girl while holding a gun. He fired toward Nuna, but she did not even need to move to avoid it. She asks the teacher what went wrong, saying she should have been able to stop her. Looking into the woman's thoughts, she says there is no way a pistol could miss from that distance. The teacher shouts that she will not be allowed to get away with this. Mocking the teacher, she demonstrates the proper way to shoot, using both hands and pressing the trigger slowly, as if guiding in a needle. At that moment, she fires at her teacher. The number count drops, showing that the woman has been taken down. Her science teacher says she learned well, then begins firing his own weapon at her. He remarks that he taught the albino girl how to handle weapons almost too well. Even so, the girl manages to hide behind a door and avoid the shots. She counts every shot he fires, waiting for the moment his ammunition runs out. The instant he runs out and starts trying to reload, the girl throws a lab coat over him. It blocks his sight as she rushes toward the long-haired teacher. She remembers once telling Daum that, someday, they could save any people together. But she believed that could only happen after the teachers were removed first. Once again, her number count falls as this teacher is brought down. Upstairs, the protagonist hears the gunshots and understands that her plan has finally begun. While it happens, he urges his friend to escape through the bedroom window. In the next moment, the white-haired girl aims her gun at the chubby teacher. The teacher says she has been arrogant from the very beginning until now. She believed a certain amount of rebellion could be useful, so she had allowed the girl to act that way. In the end, the girl only betrayed her, failing to understand the grace behind the way she was raised. Nuna says the teacher is doing well by refusing to admit her mistakes, even at the end, and should not abandon everything as if suddenly enlightened. As a villain, she says, the teacher should cry, struggle, and face a shameful end. The smile, the girl asks for a little more chaos and release. However, someone suddenly appears and presses a knife to her neck to stop her. A student dressed in black tries to keep her from carrying out her revenge. The teacher apologizes, saying she is not the only one this term who can see the numbers. Another person steps forward, aiming a gun at her and saying she is not the only one who sees them. She sees the two others from the honor room now standing against her. She asks what they are doing, insisting she was trying to save them. The girl with bangs laughs, saying no one ever asked her to do that. He says graduating at the top was almost within reach, and so was becoming a servant of the mother goddess. The teacher says things might have turned out differently if Nuna had not ruined everything. Nuna begins thinking about the comic where Crow gets revenge on the villains. She realizes that all the students have already been influenced by the school's strange teachings. She wonders if it may already be too late to make them come to their senses. Because of that, she now sees them as villains too and raises her weapon toward them. That is when she begins firing at the students she had grown up with. The sight leaves the protagonist and his friend frozen in fear. They quickly build a barricade against the door to stop her from entering. He says he had been watching the window and realized it was blocked. His red-haired friend appears, aiming a gun at and telling him to stop and move slowly. He says all of them have been deceived by Nuna. In the comic book, criminals attack the people of the city. A man watching from above warns the superhero that villains have taken over the city, and that Claw will need backup to face them all. To the hero, the only thing that matters is protecting people in danger. Then he delivers a cheesy line about having brought his coat that day. Back in reality, Nuna, stained from the chaos, mutters to herself that she is not wearing a coat. She recalls the comic books. Right in front of her, one is hanging there, and she smiles. In her unstable mind, she believes that is the outfit she is meant to wear. She puts it on and leaves the room, wondering what her superhero name should be. At her feet lie the fallen criminals from the story, or at least that is how they appear to her, though in reality they are completely different people. Meanwhile, and his friend realize they have nowhere left to escape. The young man has no idea what to do, since the window they plan to use is blocked by a pile of chairs. And Jill appears behind them, telling them to stop what they are doing and turn around slowly. Says the two of them have been fooled by Nuna. Confused and unable to understand, Dom asks his friend what is happening. The redhead, already knowing what would happen that day, told the other orphans to hide, so they would not join the escape. His plan was to let the teachers capture Nuna, so he told his friends to abandon the escape attempt and join the others in hiding. And Jill began recalling everything that had happened during her graduation and fell into panic. Seeing her condition, Dayum asked his friend to lower the weapon, saying there was no need to go that far. To the redhead, his friend needed to face her fear, because she could not be shielded forever. Dayum realized his friend had been completely swept up in the teacher's indoctrination. The serial killer pulled out his dagger, determined to get out of that place. He tried once more to persuade his friend, insisting the redhead must have noticed something was wrong with that place. Even while trembling, the redhead insisted the teachers were right. They had no reason to lie, and it was the students who had not tried hard enough. Through his tears, he asked himself that if everything there had been false, then what had all their suffering been for? During the 10 years he spent there, he had been made to take 2 lives. So even if they escaped, what kind of life would be waiting for them afterward? Lowered his dagger, told the redhead not to think that way, saying he had read a book that said they were only children. The ones truly at fault were the adults who had done this to them, and they were the ones who needed to answer for everything. He held out his hand to his friend and asked him to escape together. At that very moment, Nuna appeared inside the room. All 3 of them stared her in disbelief. If she had managed to reach them, it meant Hanjel's plan had failed. Looking at the redhead, she casually said he was the one who had revealed Daum's plan to the teachers. Once again, in the comic books, Claw's partner revealed he had found the criminals' identities. They were all students raised and trained by the mentor. The mentor was a villain they had defeated 10 years earlier, and the children had been raised in complete isolation from the world. Unable to tell right from wrong, they had grown into criminals who harmed others while seeking revenge for their master. After nearly being struck by one of them, the hero's partner admitted it was his fault for not stopping them years ago when he had the chance. Back with Nuna, she told to step aside because she would save him, leaving the boy stunned by how casually she said it. With a single shot, she brought down the friend he had desperately wanted to rescue. But she did not stop there, because she had no intention of letting Han Jill leave alive either. As she prepared to fire again, Kang Chang appeared near the door with a weapon, ready to strike. Even with the advantage of surprise, it was no match for the girl. In her mind, people would thank her for what she had done, just like in the comic books she loved. But in reality, Dom felt only horror. There was not even the slightest trace of gratitude in his eyes for her actions. In another room, more students were trying to escape through the windows, breaking the padlock that kept them trapped in the orphanage. Nuna appeared there as well, ready to deal with everyone present, but before she could carry out her plan, Dayum shoved her in an attempt to stop her. Shot she fired struck a window instead. Shattered glass rained down over him. The boy cried out in pain as cuts spread across his face. Around him were several fallen students who had failed to escape. He shouted at Nuna in desperation, asking why she was doing this. She simply answered that no one else would do it, so she had to. After all, she believed they would all grow up to become criminals. Or, just like in the comics, those children would all turn into villains. Filled with outrage and desperation, rushed toward her while still demanding to know why. At the orphanage entrance, a student barely holding on begged Mr. Helmut to save them. The man turned his gaze toward the stairs. He realized something was happening on the second floor. Upstairs, Nuna and Daum were facing each other. She dropped the gun she had been using after running out of bullets. Then she grabbed a knife. He raised it just in time to block Daum's attack. As the two confronted one another, he asked how she could know what those children would become in the future, since she could not see the numbers the way he could. After reading his diary, Nuna knew he could see how many people someone would one day kill. She blamed Daum for being careless, which allowed Handal to read his diary, blindly trust the teachers and betray him. However, his friend knew it was not that simple. Even after what the redhead had done, he trembled as he spoke, unsure of what he truly should do. If not for her, the redhead might have ended up changing sides. Nuna takes Daam's weapon away. She asks how he can be so certain that children raised in such an environment would not eventually create trouble later on. Did he truly believe orphan children, suddenly thrown into a world nothing like the one they knew, could simply adjust to it? She was convinced they never would. Because of that, they would be pushed to society's edges and forced to survive in the shadows. They would live among criminals, using the skills they had learned during their years at the orphanage. In her eyes, this would only create a cycle of violence that would endanger innocent people. The young man asks if those ridiculous theories she invented were why she went this far. To her, there was nothing ridiculous about it. It was simply the truth. With no weapon in hand, he rushes at the albino girl and knocks her down. Holding her in place, he shouts that they were not criminals, and she had no right to judge them. How could she possibly know what kind of people they would become as adults? Whether it was Hanyul or Hanjul, every one of them had the number 0 above their heads, meaning they would not harm anyone else. Nuna answers that it was obvious. They would not harm anyone else, because she had stopped them before it could happen. To her, the meaning was simple. 0 did not mean they chose not to hurt anyone in the future. It meant she had removed them from that future and prevented it herself. Wearing a broad smile, she says there is no way he could prove any of them would have changed for the better. Desperate, Daam grabs a gun and aims it at her, while deep down, she wishes they could have done everything together. After all, both of them could see the numbers, and they both loved the same comic books. Since they shared the same view of life, she had wanted them to stay together. But then he rejected the plan to eliminate all the teachers, and on top of that, he could not bring himself to stop her, even though he knew she would take 137 people down. To her, he was a coward who could never make a real decision in life, even when she dropped the gun onto the floor and gave him the chance to end it. Nuna drives an injection into his neck. At the same time, she keeps saying he is far too weak to be a hero. The girl rises to her feet as Dayum falls to the floor, overwhelmed by the substance. Holding the gun, she says she did not expect Mr. Helmet to come back so soon. Then she asks whether he managed to celebrate his daughter's birthday. This reveals that the man is actually Hyeon Cheol Ji-hyun, meaning Ji-hyun's father. With a grave expression, he asks if she was the one responsible, though he already seems certain. The girl only answers with a smile. Then the two of them fire at each other. Later, Daam opens his eyes and realizes he is alone in the room. His dagger is broken as well. He is the only one who survived. The boy walks by himself through the orphanage corridors. Eventually, his legs give out, and he sinks to the floor. Then he sees Hanjul and asks if he is all right. With a smile and no visible injuries, he says he is fine and invites his friend to come eat lunch. Life inside the orphanage appears completely ordinary. The redhead asks about the book his friend is reading. Daam says he picked it up because the cover caught his attention. The story is about a train whose brakes have stopped working. The train is heading toward 5 people tied to the tracks. But if someone pulls a lever, the train will switch to another path. By doing that, however, it will head toward one different person tied to the tracks. So he asks what choice his friend would make in that situation. And Jill admits he would not know what to do, then asks what his friend would choose. To him, losing one person would be better than losing 5. After a brief silence, the redhead asks if that is really the choice he would make. He asks why Daam did not stop Nuna in order to save everyone else. As he continues, his image turns bloodstained. He says Dayum was the only one who understood what the numbers meant. What was at risk was not just 5 lives but 137, and even then, he still did nothing. Daam cries out in desperation, saying the redhead does not understand. He says there was no way he knew Nuna would truly harm his friend and everyone in the orphanage. And Jill asked whether he would have allowed her to do as she pleased if his friends had survived, calling him selfish. Behind him, Nuna appeared, and he should have taken action. Just like what had happened on the day of their graduation, he should have reached a decision. The boy ran as he heard that. If he had chosen sooner, he would have understood that one life had to be lost either way. If he had not turned away from reality, he would have known the best choice was to stop the science teacher when he was vulnerable. Seated at a table, Daam asked how she could make such decisions without the slightest hesitation. Meanwhile, he could not even trust himself to choose correctly. Did the people bound to the tracks truly deserve to survive? Would they be able to make the world a better place? He felt he had no right to decide something like that. To him, it simply made no sense. Then he recalled the teacher saying they were chosen children, meant to battle villains under the godmother's guidance. He also remembered Nuna's earlier words, that all of them had already become criminals. In tears, he realized none of them had ever truly questioned those beliefs again. In the end, they were all no different from one another. Each of them believed they were righteous while seeing everyone else as wicked. They judged people by their own sense of justice, even though those people might not have been truly evil at all. Daam admitted that he finally understood everything. He should have stopped Nuna before his friends lost their lives. Only then could he have discovered the true number above their heads, revealing whether they might change for the better or become killers. Nuna asked what he would have done if their numbers showed they would not become good people. He have had the courage to end them. No, because he was far too weak. The boy decided that he would never hesitate again. He would make no exceptions and abandon his childish ideas about the world. Unlike the others, he resolved to judge everything without bias. To him, every life would carry equal weight. He would not act out of heroism, but as a judgment guided by reason. Once his decision was made, he moved toward Nuna, determined to use the dagger against her. That would prove that those numbers did not simply decrease at random. They were governed by clear principles and fixed rules. If Nuna was still alive somewhere, there was one thing he wanted to ask before ending things with her. He wanted to know how many lives he would save over the course of his life. To hear the voices, he needed to discover that answer. Back in the present, he woke inside the car with Heinmo beside him. The girl was calmly enjoying a snack. She jumped in surprise when he suddenly sat upright. Covered in sweat, he asked where they were. Annoyed, Dam demanded to know who had allowed her to eat the snacks he had hidden. Just as he began asking how much she had eaten, a sharp, burning pain shot through his head. It forced him to collapse back onto the bed. Worried, the young woman asked if he was all right, but he did not even have the strength to answer. The night before, he had completed his mission, even though it had nearly cost him his life. As they were leaving, she said she had checked her own number as he asked and noticed something strange. But before she could explain, he collapsed on the stairs and fell toward her, his body too heavy for her to support. She could not hold him up or stop him from falling. After calling his name several times, opened his eyes, but his expression showed he was far from okay. Back in the car, Ji Hyun explained that when he woke on the stairs, blood-like tears were running down his face, and he had not responded to her during the trip. Once they parked, he immediately lay down on the bed and remained there until that moment. Dayum explained that it happened whenever he overused his eye, causing him to faint and lose 2 or 3 days of memories. Worried about how long he had been unconscious, he asked what day it was. She told him 2 days had passed since he blacked out, and that it was December 3rd. Her answer immediately irritated him. Then he drove away without explaining where they were headed. Seeing that Ji-hyun needed an explanation, he said they were going somewhere far away where his eye could recover. The fact that he had cried blood meant his eye had already been injured before. Because of that, he could not predict the safest outcome while fleeing the scene as he usually did. He may have left something behind that could become evidence. No matter how small it was, it could still become a clue that helped the police track them down. It was almost a miracle that they had stayed near the scene for 2 full days without being found. Ji Hyun remembered how worried she had been while watching their numbers during the escape. To him, that did not seem important, since what she saw were lifespans, and those would not drop just because someone was arrested. The girl could not understand why he had trained her if it had all been meaningless. Irritated, said he was not trying to blame her. What happened had been his responsibility. Over the past 40 days, he had pushed his eye nonstop, trying to predict the best possible outcome. Understood that before long, he would push his eye beyond its limits. The girl asked whether he had done it because of that silver-haired woman. After all, he already knew what would happen if he relied too much on his power. She tried to remember the woman's name, saying several versions of Nuna aloud, because she could not recall it correctly. Hearing that, Dam slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop caused the girl to bump her head against the car's dashboard. He demanded to know how she had learned the woman's name. She admitted that she had not meant to pry into his private matters. But when he lost consciousness, he kept murmuring that woman's name over and over. Even when she tried not to listen, he continued mumbling the name repeatedly. Perhaps feeling embarrassed, he asked her to stop bringing it up. An uncomfortable silence settled inside the car. Ji-hyun asked if he was upset with her, but he said he was not. The girl had not been trying to provoke him. Still, she felt it was time for him to tell her the truth, why he had chosen to do the things he did, and what had shaped him into the kind of person he had become. Elsewhere, a police officer was in the middle of an interrogation. He warned the person sitting before him not to lie. A little earlier, he had come to the police station with 2 other officers. The man in uniform introduced himself to the homicide division officer as Director Ji Hyun-guk Kang. The officer conducting the interrogation was Samuel Guan from Anti-Corruption, while the woman beside him was Lieutenant Juseol. Park from Homicide could not see how someone from Anti-Corruption would help catch a serial killer. The director had personally chosen him, explaining that Samuel was highly capable. From the beginning, Park had disliked the way Samuel looked at people, even though he usually treated his coworkers politely and, at times, even seemed lazy while working. But in certain situations, such as an interrogation, his entire demeanor changed. Even with a smile on his face, Park could sense the hatred burning in Samuel's eyes. As he flipped through a notebook, the officer said the man being questioned had given very detailed testimony and more than enough information about what happened. Even so, he still had several questions left to ask. Only 3 people had survived the incident, including Jun Byom-go, who was now being being questioned. Since there had been more than 20 victims, it was impossible for Number to have acted completely alone. So why had only those 3 been left alive? When the man being questioned claimed he did not know, red numbers appeared above his head. That meant Samuel also possessed a special ability. Rewording his point, the officer asked why 18 of them had been marked as the serial killer's targets. Nearly all the victims were former convicts, violent offenders who were often out on parole. In short, the more serious their past crimes were, the more likely they were to become targets. Showing no emotion, Byomgo asked what the officer was trying to imply with those questions. According to Samuel's research and the club records, whenever someone was attacked or disappeared at that place, certain employees were questioned, and some had even been treated as suspects. Byomgo worked for a security company that had purchased 3 clubs from an acquaintance. It all seemed to be hiding something larger, so the officer asked whether it had any connection to the Number incident. The man firmly said he saw no connection, adding that every accusation against the company had been dropped. Meanwhile, his number went down by 1. He taunted the officer, asking if he believed they were hiding a gang and whether those accusations were nothing but false claims. Once again, the number above him decreased by 1. Then, with his eyes glowing red, Samuel asked where the suspect's phone was. Byomgo insisted he had already turned it in, but Samuel knew that was not the phone he truly used. From another room, Park noted that the man's boss had received a call from him right after Number attacked him. Even then, the suspect kept denying that he had a hidden second phone. When Samuel saw the number drop once more, Samuel asks Mr. Choi whether the accused man's boss always contacted that same number. Go snaps back that they have no proof, and that he is not there as a suspect, but as a survivor of the incident. If they kept asking questions that had nothing to do with the case, he would invoke the Fifth Amendment until they proved they had solid evidence against him. The officer is not intimidated, pointing out that even without this case, they already have plenty of reasons to investigate him. Annoyed, Go slams his hand on the table and tells them to investigate all they want, as long as they follow proper procedure. If they plan to detain him, they would need to speak to his lawyer, and he would be representing himself. Later, Jusil offers her colleague a cup of coffee. She comments that men like them have been avoiding charges for years. If they had already bribed the local police, then sending in the team that came with them was basically pointless. Samuel was used to things turning out this way. Even with special abilities, it barely changed anything. It felt like playing Mafia. Even if he pointed to the culprit, convincing everyone else was never easy. His powers only mattered when he obeyed society's rules and managed to put the system on his side. Even so, it was deeply frustrating to release people he knew were criminals. Now free, Go stands at a port, speaking over the phone about securing a cryptocurrency wallet. The person on the other end asks why he did not expose the girl and instead let them escape. But the criminal has no intention of letting them be handed over to justice. He explains that a woman with special powers has been in contact with their boss. They would plan their revenge carefully and make it unfold exactly as intended, since the police had done a miserable job for over 2 months and could not be trusted. Suddenly, the person he is speaking with stops answering, as if something has happened to him. From what Byomgo says, his other allies have disappeared too, and his ride is taking longer than expected to arrive. Behind him, a man tries to choke him with a line. He demands to know who is attacking him. Samuel repeats his comment about the police being useless and doing a terrible job, saying he completely agrees. The police could not be trusted, always talking about criminals' rights instead of catching them. He says he will end Go's suffering slowly, without relying on guns or knives. Before he can finish, a wave crashes through the shipyard. The impact gives Go the chance to cut the line around his neck. He lunges at the officer with a knife. After forcing him back, he runs off through the shipyard. Samuel picks up the fallen man's phone, complaining that she is going to punish him for this. Meanwhile, Byomgo keeps running as he tries to get away. Before long, he realizes someone is coming after him. It feels unreal that the officer has found him so quickly, and the man does not seem rushed at all while hunting him down. Ju Seol, who is also part of the chase, manages to restrain the criminal, who had assumed Samuel was the only one after him. She complains that if her partner wants to take his anger out on these men, he should at least stay alert enough to stop them escaping. Samuel does not seem concerned, since he knows she is always there to handle the mess. Go struggles in the girl's grip, unable to understand how she can be so strong. As if it is nothing, the officer asks whether the criminal wants to live. He says he could let him go, because everyone deserves a second chance. The crimes committed by him and his gang were terrible, from arranging murders to running cryptocurrency scams and more. The officer asks if he truly regrets any of it. Desperate, Byomgo says he regrets everything and would even confess to his crimes. At that moment, his number drops even lower. Watching him, Samuel signals his partner to finish it, while the criminal keeps saying he will apologize to every victim who suffered because of him. A little later, several drums are thrown into the sea, likely hiding something that should never be found. As they watch the water, the two partners talk casually about their favorite lollipop flavors. Samuel is curious about the woman Byung-go tried to contact, and the answer might be hidden on the criminal's phone. He says he expected hiding Ji-hyun from the police to be harder, but she acted exactly the way they wanted. Still, Juseol warns that it is only a matter of time before they are discovered. Since Number left clues behind, it means he is struggling to predict the best possible escape route. The two decide they must reach Dae-yum and Ji-hyun before the police do. Juseol asks what her partner plans to do after they catch them. He calmly says he will do what he always does: judge them, learn what kind of people they are, and find out why they work together. Most importantly, he wants to know their standards for punishment. The first step is to interrogate them, and if their reasons make no sense, he will decide what happens next. Far away, Dam says he never expected anyone to understand the standards he used when choosing targets. He was not chasing justice or trying to become a hero. He simply could not trust anyone's judgment, including his own, when deciding who was good, who was bad, and who should be spared. In his view, every life has equal value, and the possibilities are endless. So he will do whatever is needed to follow the path that saves the greatest number of lives. After explaining all of his motives, he asks Ji-hyun whether she is satisfied now. Back with the police, they decide to pursue Ji-hyun first. A few days later, Ji-hyun leaves a store carrying a shopping list with new clothes, water, protein bars, and disinfectant. Suddenly, a woman touched her shoulder and startled her, saying she wanted to talk about God. After apologizing, the girl hurried away from the woman as quickly as she could. She thought the woman had recognized her, which was why she reacted so sharply, even though responding that way must have made her look extremely suspicious. During the livestream she had appeared in, part of her face had been shown, making her anxious that someone might recognize her. She felt slightly relieved when people walked past without noticing her, thinking 2 weeks had already passed since the video. By now, most people probably would not remember it, and as she thought about it, 2 weeks had also passed since she met Number. Day before, he had told her his entire story and the reasons behind his actions. Still, even after learning all of that, she remained confused. None of it felt real. It was hard for her to believe that things like that had happened in her own country. From what she understood, the serial killer's revenge seemed to be aimed at Nuna. Explained that he was not acting out of revenge or any duty to stop that woman. He targeted her only because her number was high, meaning she would be connected to many future deaths. If he failed to treat every human life equally, he would be no different from her. Ji-hyun knew the woman also had an ability opposite to Numbers, letting her see how many lives someone would save. He agreed, but that was exactly what he could not understand, because there seemed to be a contradiction in it. At that moment, the sound of police sirens rang out. It caught both of them completely off guard. Fortunately, the patrol car passed by at a distance. Still, that did not mean they could remain there calmly. handed the girl an envelope and a cell phone, saying his eye had improved. He could see the numbers again, but nothing beyond that. He would need 2 or 3 more days before he could see the best escape route. Staying hidden was the safest option, but he did not know what clues they had left behind, and the police might already be searching for them. Their best choice was to erase anything that could lead to them and move somewhere else as quickly as possible. He would prepare the car while she went into the city to buy the items on his list. The list included new clothes, a cap, and shoes for her. As Ji-hyun walked through the city, she watched the remaining lifespans of the people passing by. Her thoughts kept circling around numbers and new abilities, as well as the train dilemma about choosing whether to save 5 people or only 1. Even if the logic made sense, none of it felt right to her. What if someone's death count came from serving in the army or the police? Or what if that person was only planning to take revenge on criminals? In an extreme case, what if a hero punished dangerous criminals and serial killers in the name of justice? Would going after people with high death counts really make the world a better place? That thought did not mean Nuna was some kind of hero. That woman, there was no guarantee the children raised in the orphanage would not grow into bad people someday. They might continue a cycle of violence that would eventually hurt innocent people. In a certain way, Nuna's reasoning did contain a point. It was not morally right, but realistically, those children had no proper role models to guide them. At that moment, Ji-hyun realized she was thinking like the mothers who had complained at school when she was younger. They had said she could never grow into a good person with her father in prison because she had no example to follow. Those memories made it hard for her to breathe as she thought about everything that had happened. Number's image came to mind, saying it was reasonable to kill someone before that person harmed others. He had agreed with that idea, saying he would not hesitate if his friends grew up to become murderers. Besides, he also felt no regret for trying to kill her, putting aside stereotypes and personal standards. The truth was that she would eventually be responsible for the deaths of 43 and 26 people. A child on the street looked at Ji Hyun, told their mother that the girl did not look well. The woman agreed and asked Ji Hyun if she was all right. Ji Hyun replied that she was perfectly fine, but after all the talk about killing and being killed with there was no way she truly could be. She wondered whether she really was destined to be connected to an enormous number of deaths. While sitting at the bus stop, she noticed the remaining lifespans of the child and mother who had just spoken to her. As their numbers suddenly dropped, she glanced around and saw the numbers of the other people nearby were also falling quickly. She stood up, trying to understand how so many people's numbers could be decreasing at once. When the bus arrived, she realized with horror that everyone whose numbers were falling was boarding that same bus. Ji Hyun could only see 2 units of time at once, like years and months, or days and hours, divided by a colon. It felt as though she was learning how to read time itself, forcing herself to recognize the numbers assigned to each unit. By doing that, she could understand more clearly what each number meant. Watching those people's remaining time fall minute by minute was something she could not grow used to. She knew something awful was about to happen, yet some people's time was not falling as quickly as the others. After several stops, the girl noticed that those people began getting off the bus. People with little time left kept boarding, while those with more time stepped off, and that pattern would continue for another 19 minutes. That was the time remaining before they met their fate. The child from earlier gently tugged at her shirt. Then he held out a piece of candy to the girl. He said that whenever he got sick, he had to take medicine, but when that happened, his father would let him have a candy he liked. Ji Hyun smiled at the boy, saying she was all right, then asked if he liked strawberry candy. The child smiled brightly and said he did. It was painful to know that someone so young had so little time remaining. At that moment, called her and asked what she was doing. Not knowing what else to do, she asked him for help. She told him which bus she was on and said only 17 minutes remained before something happened. Judging by the time it would take the bus to reach its destination, the incident would happen after 5 more stops. He asked whether she had any idea what might occur. To her, it looked like nothing more than an ordinary bus. The girl wanted him to predict where the incident would happen while she tried to get the passengers off before then. To figure out what might cause it, Number asked for photos of the passengers and driver so he could check how many people each might endanger. When she heard him request a photo of the driver, she realized that causing an accident would also count toward a person's number. That was obvious. A vehicle could become a kind of weapon, and causing an accident was no different from directly hurting someone. Even so, she could not accept that a collision should be treated the same as murder. Number explained that motive did not matter. Whether intentional or not, if an action caused people to die, it would still count. He added that if she truly wanted to save them, she had better hope one of the passengers was responsible. He considered possibilities like earthquakes, collapses, or a chain of collisions. If it was a natural disaster, no single person could be blamed for everything, so no one's number would increase from the deaths. If one person alone was responsible, stopping that person would save everyone else. After checking the photos, it did not seem like anyone on the bus would be the cause of what was about to happen. Ji Hyun grew increasingly desperate after hearing that once a lifespan or death count was decided, the number would not change. Was heading toward the predicted accident site. While she had to prepare for 3 possible outcomes, he might find the culprit near the scene, or there might be someone responsible whom they could not locate in time. The final possibility was that there was no culprit at all, and the passengers would simply be caught in an accident. The girl asked how likely the first scenario was. To him, the odds did not matter. They would assume it was possible and act based on that. She had to find some way to get everyone off the bus, even if she could not be sure it would help. Then he ended the call without saying anything more. Ji Hyun felt irritated by his negative attitude. More passengers were now getting on, and she had only 14 minutes left to find a way to make everyone evacuate. The girl noticed a man asleep in the seat ahead of her, with a lighter tucked into his pocket. She tried to take the lighter from him and also pulled some stuffing out of her new jacket. Even if she could not start a fire, making enough smoke to alarm the passengers would be enough. Although the lighter had fuel, she could not get it to ignite. When she finally managed to produce a flame, the bus suddenly made a sharp turn. Ji Hyun lost her balance and dropped the lighter. An elderly woman seated a little farther ahead picked it up and stretched out her arm to return it. But before she could hand it over, a car suddenly cut in front of the bus. The driver was forced to brake hard to avoid a collision. Because Ji-hyun had not been holding on, her face struck one of the bus's metal bars. This time, there was no chance to get the lighter back. Someone stepped on it, breaking it cleanly in two. She remembered Number telling her to do everything possible to evacuate the passengers. Yet he had also warned it might change nothing. And now it truly felt as if something kept blocking her every attempt. Elsewhere, Dame walked while studying the passenger photos Ji-hyun had sent, wondering what she would do if she were in his position. After all, he was certain that the numbers could not be changed. The girl even managed to get hold of one of the small hammers meant for breaking bus windows during emergencies. Yet, as if fate itself wanted to prove it could not be altered, the tool somehow slipped out through the window. Seeing her sway with every turn and sudden brake of the vehicle, the driver told Ji-hyun to hold the handrail before she ended up falling. What was happening felt far too strange to dismiss as simple coincidence. The moment she picked up the lighter, it dropped, and someone stepped on it, snapping it in half. When she grabbed the emergency hammer, hoping to create a disturbance by breaking a window, it was somehow flung out of the bus. Every attempt she made was blocked, as though some unseen force was stopping her from halting the bus. Was this what Number meant when he said that once a number was fixed, it would never change? At that moment, she received a call from him. He said he had already inspected the entire area around the place where the accident was expected to happen. But just as he had suspected, there was no obvious cause for the coming incident, and no destined criminal nearby. Considering the layout of the surrounding buildings and roads, a structural collapse seemed unlikely. A vehicle collision was far more likely to occur. A rollover or even an explosion was possible too, though those outcomes seemed less probable. Once the bus came closer to his position, he could narrow down what was going to happen more easily. Either way, he did not think she should cling to hope that those people's fate could be changed. Only 12 minutes and 24 seconds were left. Ji-hyun had to come up with something quickly. Once a number was decided, it could not be altered, and if someone tried, some mysterious force stopped them. But that explanation did not make sense. If that theory were true, then numbers should also be prevented from stopping destined criminals. If those criminals were stopped before harming anyone, their count would fall to 0, so the fact that Number could remove them created a contradiction. How was he able to stop destined criminals without being blocked by fate? She remembered the lessons where he had taught her how to use her ability. With it, she could tell which weapon was actually loaded. She also recalled his remark about overworking his eye after using it nonstop for the previous 40 days. In that instant, the answer to what she needed to do came to her. She stood up. Now, only 11 minutes and 9 seconds remained. She touched the fire extinguisher near the bus door. Then she tested what would happen while she was still inside the vehicle. Her remaining time was only 10 minutes, but once she stepped outside, her normal count of 30 years and 9 days returned. From that experience, she realized two important things. First, simply staying inside the bus guaranteed that she would die within minutes. Second, unlike other people's numbers, her own future could shift freely at any moment. Ji-hyun calculated that in just a few seconds, the bus would make a sharp right turn. When it happened, the fire extinguisher came loose and began rolling across the floor of the bus. The girl quickly lifted the extinguisher from the floor. She thought she had finally found an opening to change the future. She considered how, whenever Number dealt with a target, he used his own number to calculate the best course of action. Of course, he was trying to avoid being caught by the police. But what if there was another reason entirely? What if he watched his own number so he could alter a future that would otherwise be fixed? With that thought, she rushed toward the driver, who demanded to know what she was doing. Ji-hyun intended to create an accident before the real one could occur. It would be something minor, something that would not shorten any passenger's remaining life. She would find a way to extend her lifespan without needing to leave the bus. By doing so, she believed she could also extend the lives of everyone else inside. Because of her actions, the driver lost control, and the bus swerved toward a pole. Meanwhile, Daum watched people's numbers from the top of a building. Just doing that was enough to make his eye ache. Ji-hyun called him, and he asked how things were going. At that moment, his eyes caught sight of someone suspicious in the crowd below. Someone with a high number was drawing closer. Number rushed to stop the tragedy that was about to happen. At the same time, he stayed on the phone with the girl. She was frantic because every attempt she had made had ended in failure. 4 minutes and 25 seconds earlier, the bus had crashed into a pole. Not long after, a police car arrived to check whether an accident had happened there. Just as she had predicted, the crash was not severe, and no one suffered serious injuries. The officers began handling the situation directly at the scene. They questioned the bus driver, who described a girl likely in her 20s, with brown hair and a green jacket. Afraid of being recognized, she left the area and quickly changed her clothes. She had gotten off the bus before the smoke even cleared, hoping no one would notice her. Ji Hyun felt relieved because her lifespan had returned to normal, and she had saved those people. The problem was that, despite trying to stay unnoticed, she had been recorded by the bus cameras and seen by many people passing by on the street. Even so, the girl tried to reassure herself that everything would somehow work out. She noticed that everyone around her now had to change their plans after getting off the bus. Even the driver only had to give some personal information to the officer before being allowed to leave. A nearby couple mentioned that they could take the train and reach their destination even faster. Most of the passengers were headed to a concert, so they also chose to take the subway. Ji Hyun realized something was not right. Everyone whose remaining lifespan was nearly gone was heading toward the same station. She ran to the station to confirm whether what she had seen was true. Sure enough, every person with a fading lifespan was moving toward the same destination. Over the phone, she told, that those people had originally been destined to die on the bus. She was certain because the moment she stepped off the vehicle, her own lifespan went back to normal. She could hardly believe what was unfolding. The cause of the disaster had shifted into a subway incident. Because of that, the lifespans of those people had not changed at all. Unaware of the danger, the passengers said they could now reach their planned destination even faster than by bus. Since the police arrived early at the crash site, the situation was settled quickly. The accident had also happened right beside a subway station. It felt far too coincidental that every one of those people was headed to the same place. It was as if everything was moving according to a script already written. She still could not believe what was happening. On the call, she asked Number what she was supposed to do now. She had believed she could alter the future by watching her own number, but now she was no longer sure. Could she really change the forces that governed the present, the past, and the future? Tried to steady her, saying he understood exactly how she felt. He had once searched for a way to lower the numbers himself. He had tried to change the future without removing the people destined to become criminals. She was not wrong. Self-awareness truly did give her the ability to alter the future. More precisely, while watching her own number, she was not pushed aside by the power of fate. The real problem was that destiny always attempted to return things to their original course. So, while she remained in a state of self-awareness, she needed to make the future change permanent. That was the most important point. Now there was one thing she had to focus on. This time there truly was someone responsible for the accident. A destined criminal would directly cause the deaths of all those people. He was on his way to the station at that very moment, with following close behind. Since his eye had not fully recovered, it meant she had to deal with this target herself. After all, she was the one capable of using self-awareness. The question was whether she would stop him or let everyone die just to keep her own hands clean. This was a choice she had to make by herself. Those words stirred a rush of memories in the girl, recalling how badly she had wanted not to become like her father. She remembered the people who believed she would turn out just as terrible as him. Was this the fate so many people had expected for her? If so, then so be it. In her memories with her friend, she had said she would never become someone like her father. She wanted to grow into a responsible, happy, and emotionally stable woman. When her friend was taken from her, and she almost crossed the line against the culprit, she found herself surrounded by people saying she truly was no different from her father. What happened to her was caused by those who forced her out of school and exposed her life for everyone to see. In despair, she felt as though she had never been free to become anything except a killer. At that moment, Daum's call reached her phone. His voice pulled the girl back into reality. They had only 5 minutes left before the incident happened. She had to decide immediately. What was she supposed to do? Should she go after the culprit and save those people, or simply let them all die? Ji Hyun did not believe she could do what had to be done. How could she take another human life with her own hands? At that moment, the train stopped at another station, and the culprit stepped into car number 2. Number confirmed that Ji Hyun was in car number 6 and told her to meet him, because he needed to give her something. He could not pass the culprit himself to reach her. He also could not get close enough to the target to stop him, so she had to reach car number 2 as quickly as possible, and the girl asked what he intended to give her. Had lethal injections she could use to stop the criminal. All she had to do was get near the target and inject the substance without being noticed. Even then, Ji Hyun asked whether there was truly no other choice. Number understood that saving both sides would be the ideal outcome, but based on his experience, that was impossible. With no other option left, she headed toward car number 2. Around her, she watched people's remaining lifespans continue to shrink. There had been about 17 passengers on the bus, but now the number of possible victims had increased by at least 10. How would the criminal harm all these people? Would it be with a bomb, a fire, or some kind of chemical attack? Most likely, the person intended to start a fire. Whatever motive had driven this person, the result was always the same. In the end, it was still a dangerous criminal about to take dozens of innocent lives. What was wrong with stopping a few bad people? Would it not be better if people like that disappeared? Suddenly the train lurched. Movement caused the criminal's bag to open. Several strange items spilled out across the floor. She had a lighter in her hand, while trash and gasoline were among the things that had fallen from the backpack. A man using his phone told the woman to move out of his way. When he saw her belongings scattered on the floor, he rudely asked if she was a beggar. The heavyset man called her things garbage and began kicking the criminal's belongings aside. The moment he picked up a stuffed animal, the woman cried out. She begged him to give the plush toy back to her. Just then, the train shook again, knocking the criminal down. Ignoring how serious the situation had become, some passengers began recording and laughing at everything. Meanwhile, the older heavyset man kept ordering her to get out of the way. Looking into the woman's eyes, Ji-hyun understood that the culprit believed she had no choice but to go through with it. Sensing that something unusual had happened, Da-um asked her what was going on. Meanwhile, the girl grabbed the criminal's bag and ran through the train cars with the woman chasing after her. She was trying to recover her belongings so she could carry out her plan. Number could not understand why the girl was acting this way. She was supposed to return to him in the other car and take the weapon. Even Ji-hyun herself did not fully understand why she was doing it. For a brief moment, she had seen part of herself in that woman. Girl did not know who the woman was or what hardships she had faced in her life, and because she knew nothing about her, Ji-hyun could not bring herself to judge her so recklessly. Should she not first learn that person's story, and what had led her toward such a terrible fate? Meanwhile, Da-um shouted that stealing the criminal's bag would not change fate. In the end, she would still have to choose between saving the passengers and saving the criminal. Then she asked whether he was truly certain the future could not be changed. Ever since the bus accident, something had been bothering her. When the accident shifted from the bus to the train and Ji-hyun saw the passengers' remaining lifespans, people who had previously been on the bus saw their lifespans drop even faster. In other words, the future of 10 additional people worsened the moment they boarded that train. For a moment, Number fell silent, unable to answer her. Ji-hyun. There was still too much they did not understand about the numbers, and there had to be some loophole they could use. So she made her choice and chose a third option. She would save everyone. Da-um could hardly believe what he was hearing. It felt as though she had ignored everything he had said, despite his countless failed attempts to change the future. According to the girl, it had been impossible because she had not been there, and he could only see how many lives someone would take. This was something she had to attempt, because only she could see the number of victims. Based on the number, becoming aware of it allowed her to alter the future. The problem was that the moment she stopped using her ability, fate tried to return everything to its original course. Last time, damn, he had managed to save a family of 3 by stopping the person meant to endanger them. Following that logic, she needed to break the very flow of destiny while using her power. Ji-hyun thought that until now, Number had only changed a person's future death count by removing their target. No other method had worked for him, because he could only see how many lives someone would directly take, not the full number of victims. In Ji-hyun's case, she could see both the victims' numbers and their remaining lifespans. So instead of stopping the culprit by ending them, she would try to save the victims by preventing the crime itself. If that reasoning was right, then perhaps she could save both sides. It sounded completely insane. If something like that were possible, they would not be trapped in this situation now. The girl planned to keep using her ability until the passengers' remaining time ran out. At that moment, they had only 2 minutes and 1 second left to live. She would try to use her power so they would not be controlled by the pull of destiny. Maybe she could keep them alive, even after their allotted time reached its end. By doing that, she might open a new possibility, one that allowed a future completely different from the fate originally set for those people. Worried about the girl, Dam asked whether she could really withstand the pain of using that power for so long. Sure enough, her eyes looked as if they were burning while she kept using her ability without rest. Eventually, the pain became too much for her to endure, and she collapsed onto the floor. For a brief moment, she closed her eyes. The train passengers approached Hyunmo, asking whether she was feeling sick. At that instant, a terrible pain struck her, as though tiny shards of glass were piercing her eyes. Her partner reminded her that if she slipped even for a second, destiny's force would move against her again. When she looked at the backpack that had fallen to the floor, the girl noticed liquid seeping out from inside it. Without her realizing it, the gasoline bottle inside the backpack had begun to leak. The people around her, who had first tried to help, also realized the same liquid had stained them. Looking back, she saw a trail of gasoline stretching across the floor from the start of the car. The destined culprit finally found the girl and demanded that she return the backpack. She wanted her stuffed toy back and began asking why no one ever seemed to listen to her. Ignoring everyone around her, the woman lit a blowtorch in the middle of the train car. The passengers panicked, knowing that if the flame touched the gasoline, it could start a fire. They rushed toward the next car. Desperate, Ji-hyun knew she had to act immediately, activate the power in her eyes once more. Using the confusion to his advantage, Number, who was in the car ahead, fired a shot without being noticed. The bullet ricocheted and struck the window just above the arsonist. To shield herself from the breaking glass, the woman dropped the blowtorch, and it clattered onto the floor. The passengers kept fleeing from the area. Meanwhile, Number knew that even with a direct aim, he would not be able to hit the culprit. He looked at the girl, thinking about her choice to save both sides. Though it seemed impossible to him, he still found himself hoping for a miracle and a better ending. Thinking it over, they knew nothing about that woman's story. They felt no pity for her or for the circumstances that had led her there. Bringing gasoline and a lighter onto the train had been a choice she made knowingly. But what if it had been the only path left to her, the only option for someone who felt her whole future had been ruined? Before the woman could take back her things, Ji-hyun grabbed the gasoline bottle and poured the remaining liquid over herself. Neither nor the culprit had expected her to make that choice. Only 42 seconds remained. The girl felt that she, more than anyone, could not turn away from that culprit's future. Using her ability, she realized the passengers were trapped in panic, and if the gasoline ignited, none of them would make it out safely. Moving through the train car, she knew she had to find a way for both herself and everyone else to survive. The criminal, refusing to let the girl ruin her plan, managed to snatch the blowtorch from the floor, and she aimed it straight at Ji-hyun. At that moment, the train emerged from the tunnel. That gave the girl the opening she needed to stop the criminal. With less than 10 seconds left, she pushed the woman toward the train doors. Refusing to back down, the woman relit the blowtorch and tried to use it against her opponent. To stop her, the girl slammed her backpack into the woman's hand, breaking the nearby window. She knew that glass was weaker because had struck the window earlier with his shot. The bag packed with flammable material flew out of the train and dropped into the sea below. Feeling relieved, she called Number and asked if he had seen what she had just done. She had truly succeeded in changing the future. Amid all the chaos, the train came to a stop, allowing the passengers to leave safely. Number appeared behind the girl and draped a shirt over her back. He told her to hide her face, blend into the crowd, and leave quietly. Police officers were already at the scene. When she checked the passengers' remaining lifespans, she was sure they would all be able to live normally now. Ji-hyun felt overwhelming joy. She had saved everyone there without needing to take anyone's life to do it. Once things calmed down, Number said she had drawn far too much attention, especially after he had told her to stay discreet with police nearby. Not wanting that happiness spoiled, she chose to take his words as a compliment. She said that since they now knew a person's number could change, maybe her own future count could change too. If there was anything she could do to alter that number, she would do it. Excited, Ji-hyun told him they no longer had to choose who to sacrifice, because they could save everyone. Despite her excitement, Number said nothing. Before they left the station, he told her there was still something they needed to confirm. The two went back to the scene, which was now packed with police officers. The girl did not understand why they had returned or what they were supposed to find there. Then explained that, by her reasoning, there was no longer any need to choose someone to be sacrificed. She had managed to save 27 people. Instead of directly stopping the cause of their deaths, she had pushed the victims past the point where they were meant to die, extending their remaining time. In that way, she had achieved her original goal of saving them. Then he asked whether, after everything, she had checked the criminal's remaining lifespan again. Just ahead, police officers were escorting the woman out of the station beneath a sign. The instant the woman passed under it, the sign suddenly came loose and fell. It struck the destined criminal directly on the head. Ji-hyun stared in disbelief, unable to accept what had happened before her eyes. Even the police officers seemed unable to believe the sudden accident. The sign had hit only the criminal. Looking at the woman, Ji-hyun knew her remaining time had reached its end. In that moment, her mind went completely blank. She rushed toward the woman, screaming for her not to die. Before she could reach the criminal, Ji-hyun stumbled and fell. She remembered Number's words about how she still did not understand what was truly happening. The numbers were unchangeable unless the criminal was stopped. Only then would the number hovering above those people's heads truly disappear. As that thought hit her, a police officer reached out to help. The officer asked her to remove her beanie so they could confirm her identity. Instead of obeying the woman's request, Ji-hyun got up and ran out of the station. In an alley outside, she called and asked if he had known this would happen. She was certain he had known the result of her actions and had still chosen to stay silent. He explained that at first. He made sure the destined criminals were arrested, leaving them imprisoned for the rest of their lives. This happened before he came back to Korea, and whenever one of them was arrested, another hidden crime would surface, eventually leading to a death sentence. Another criminal, locked away and unable to move freely in his cell, developed an infected wound that eventually cost him his life. In the end, he realized that no matter how hard he tried to save everyone, fate always found a way to take those people. That meant he eventually had no choice but to decide which side to save. Everything involved was far beyond his abilities and even beyond the meaning of the numbers themselves. From the moment he left the orphanage to where he stood now, every step had been shaped by one choice after another. Number learned through painful experience that saving both sides was impossible. Even when he thought he had succeeded, someone was always lost in the end. After so many years, he came to believe the best response was to save as many people as possible. He admitted he had hidden this truth from her on purpose, hoping to spare her that pain. He had also believed another ability user might truly change fate. Fortunately, he had once again seen that the numbers could not be changed. Even after hearing all of this, Ji Hyun refused to accept it, asking whether the destined criminals would really take someone's life no matter what. Through her tears, she kept asking whether executing those criminals was truly the best way to handle the situation. She shouted into the phone, unable to accept that reality. Then someone approached her from behind. When the girl suddenly stopped talking and only stated it came through the call, Number immediately sensed that something was wrong. Ji Hyun was nearly attacked by Samuel from behind. Seeing that she had been speaking to someone on the phone, the officer asked who had upset her so much and who she was talking to. Samuel told Ji Hyun to call back the person she had been speaking with moments earlier. From the way he spoke, the girl could already tell that he knew something about the serial killer. Samuel ordered Ji Hyun to call Da again, telling her to say she had dropped her phone and called back after calming down. He told her to follow his instructions exactly, saying he would count to 3 before she unmuted the call. The moment the call resumed, she called out to her colleague without saying his name. He immediately asked who was there. The officer realized Number was smart and had been using a voice changer. He asked whether he was speaking to the famous serial killer, and realizing the officer knew who he was, asked what he really wanted. With an easy smile, Samuel said he wanted to learn more about his work as a vigilante. He suggested that the two of them meet in person and talk privately. The serial killer did not know what the officer was planning, but from his words, it did not sound as if arresting him was the goal. If they had been followed at the subway station, the officer would have come straight after him. But since he went to Hyunmo first, it meant they had already been tracked before the subway incident. Samuel also said he had something to do with the girl and did not care what happened to her. He taunted him, saying that unlike himself, the serial killer clearly cared about the girl's fate. He threatened saying that if they did not meet face to face in an abandoned building at 10 p.m., the girl could be in danger. Without the slightest hesitation, refused to meet Samuel. To him, the officer was just as pathetic as the gangsters he had dealt with before. He asked whether the man lacked the courage to face them without using a hostage. Number confidently said that even if the officer threatened the girl, he knew Ji Hyun would not die so easily. As soon as Number ended the call, the officer thought about the criminal's complete lack of concern. Were the two not as close as he had assumed? Before he could think further, the girl started coughing after nearly being choked. The man finally lets her go. Laughing at the situation, he asks if she is all right and says she does not need to worry about dying. After all, he had never truly intended to put her life at risk. He explains that he and the partner who had just appeared are police officers, and police officers do not kill people, especially not a teenager. This only makes Ji Hyun even more frightened. What was he talking about? Were those two really police officers? Seeing that his partner looked unhappy with the situation, Samuel decides it would be better to continue somewhere else. The officer says he will not force the girl to come with them, but reminds her that she caused quite a disturbance at the subway station. Now the police are looking for her. Could she really manage on her own? Besides, if she intended to meet the serial killer, staying with him would be the best option. Frightened and unable to fully understand what was happening, she felt that going with those people might be the safest choice. Far away, was able to track the girl's real-time location through GPS. Samuel, who had her phone, soon noticed that someone was monitoring her location live. Even though the serial killer had acted as if he did not care about her, he could still see exactly where she was. That made the criminal even more intriguing, and Samuel wanted to learn what the girl meant to him. In the back seat, the girl tried to use her power to see how much life the officers had left. But ever since she used her ability on the train, her eye had been overloaded, and trying to use it again caused intense pain. At this rate, there was no way she could tell how much time they still had left. At that moment, Samuel fixed an intense stare on her. He asked whether the girl's eye was hurting. From that question alone, she realized something was definitely wrong with this man. The officer began muttering that everything finally made sense, and that he should have noticed sooner. He told his partner to keep driving, saying they were going for a ride. After moving into the back seat, he asked with a chilling look whether they should begin discussing the real matter. He warned Hyunmo not to even consider lying to him. Elsewhere in the city, asked over the phone whether his order had already arrived. The woman on the line gave him an address along with the password needed to enter the garage. The moment he reached the assigned location, a motorcycle was parked there, waiting for him. Knowing his habits, the woman warned him not to wreck the vehicle this time. Unbothered, replied that things like that were not exactly within his control. During Samuel's years as a detective, he learned that a person's appearance could reveal a surprising amount. Even so, he knew looks alone were never were enough to prove what someone was truly like. Was the suspect in front of him simply someone who had made one terrible choice? Or were people like this already rotten at the core? Were they hiding some repulsive nature that left no room for redemption? No one could say for certain except him. A few days earlier, another officer had shown him the livestream where Ji Hyun appeared. He instantly recognized her as the daughter of the serial killer from 12 years ago, while the other officer said the man in the video was one victim's father. The footage showed the girl attacking the man in order to save her friend. When his colleague suggested she might be connected to Number, Samuel acted as if he knew nothing. After the gang incident, he and his partner noted that the girl had not only appeared on security cameras, but had also left footprints behind. By his estimate, Jihan was still school-aged, yet she was moving around with an infamous serial killer. He wanted to know the reason behind that. While confronting a suspect, the officer gave the man all the information he had on the girl and ordered him to find her. If the man he was questioning obeyed, Samuel promised to make every piece of evidence against him disappear. Apparently, the criminal already knew the officer's methods well and refused to follow his demand. To Samuel, it was all part of a game, and his final goal was to reach the source of all evil. However, getting what he wanted carried heavy responsibility, because one careless move could lead to innocent people losing their lives. One day, while simply trying to be kind to his colleagues, he and his partner heard a report over the patrol car radio about a bus accident. The suspect was described as a woman who looked very similar to Ji Hyun. That information immediately caught the attention of Samuel and his partner, and he was ready to do whatever it took to catch them. If he failed, he knew someone would end up dead. There was no one else capable of handling this. He had to foresee death, or someone precious to him would be taken away. Back in the car, the officer asked the girl what had happened to her eyes to make them hurt. Despite his question, the girl stayed silent. Samuel told her she could be honest, since this was not an official investigation. To make it simpler, he offered three possibilities. First, dirt had gotten in her eye. Second, she had injured it during the bus incident. The third possibility was that she had overused her eye. When Han Mo heard the third option, her body reacted instinctively, even though she said nothing. That reaction alone convinced him it was the correct answer, and he asked what she had done to overuse her eye. Realizing the girl intended to keep quiet, he moved to the next question, asking why she had caused such chaos on the bus and subway. The first possibility was that she wanted to frighten and harm innocent people. The second was that she created confusion to stop the bus. As Hyun Mo listened to the options, she tried to decide how she should answer. She was not even certain these people were really police officers. The girl did not know the officer's goal, but what unsettled her most was the feeling that answering him would end badly. When she gave no reply, Samuel asked if she had truly meant to terrify those people. To him, it was not surprising, since he thought attempted murder had not been enough for her. Samuel told her not to be nervous, saying he knew she was not especially evil and only believed she had never been treated fairly. In a moment of anger toward the society that rejected her, she had poured all her frustration onto innocent people, without looking directly at Jihan. The officer asked if he was right and whether that was why she followed the serial killer. Furious, Jihan shouted that he was wrong. She said he knew nothing about her and had no right to call her a murderer. In response, the man simply looked at her for a moment. Eventually, he admitted that he had misunderstood her intentions in this situation, but if she had not meant to harm anyone, then what was she trying to do? The only other possibility was that she wanted to stop the bus. Samuel began murmuring that she must have known something was going to happen, something only she could have known. With a triumphant smile, he asked what she had known about the future. Maybe she knew the exact time or location where the accident would occur, or perhaps she could even see how many lives a person was fated to take. There was also the possibility that she knew when someone was destined to die. Although she knew this man would be difficult to handle, the girl had no intention of making things easy for him either. So she asked what kind of numbers he could see, saying she would tell him what she knew once he answered. She guessed that he might know someone's destined punishment, or how many crimes a person was meant to commit, or perhaps even the number of times someone would deceive another person. This time, Samuel was the one shaken by her words, struggling to process what he had just heard. Suddenly, a hand smashed through the car window and yanked him by the shirt. From the driver's seat, the officer's partner cried out to him in alarm. Staring at Samuel, the serial killer remarked that it had been a long time since he had seen such a high number. Then he asked what the man's final words or wishes would be.